Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Apples and Ginos Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the podcast you come to when you're finally ready to take fantasy hockey seriously. My name is Nibbelink. I'm the creator of Apples and Ginos, originator of the Zero G Draft Strategy. And in this podcast, Blake and I are going to continue our annual 8-episode series in which we go team by team comparing notes on our projections for the 2025-26 season. Let's get it. And of course, I have your friend and my best friend. It's Blake Creamer. Blake, how are we feeling tonight?
I feel good, man. That's exactly what I needed to hear. I feel validated. I feel seen. Thank you very much, my big man. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. This is, what I love about this. So we're doing the projection episode here, and you can tell we're in the middle of kind of draft season here because on our Discord, people are like, when's the next projection episode, right? Like, when's the next time you guys are going to talk about 4 teams for 2 hours? And we're like, yeah, coming right up. You got it there, stud. So I'm excited to get into this with you. Honestly, you've said it before. I agree. This is some of the best content that we make.
Yeah, super important. We had to take a bit of a hiatus on this for the last little bit. We have put out a fantasy hockey guide. If you haven't noticed, we have put together the Apples and Ginos Patron League, the APL. If you haven't noticed, there's going to be links to those things in the description. But yeah, that has taken a fair bit of time. We've both been burning the candle at both ends for a number of weeks at this point. So unfortunately, the ability and the time required to put out 2-hour episodes has not been on our side the last little bit, but we are back and we're going to close it out.
Baby.
We're going to do this one. We're going to have one more in the 8-part series after this, and then we'll have concluded our projection series, which, as you mentioned, is probably some of the best and most important content that we put out every single year to prepare you for your fantasy hockey drafts. Blake, let's get into it. St. Louis is first up. Key departures here: Zachary Bolduc and Ryan Suter on the back end. Nothing too crazy. Bolduc was a pretty solid performer for them down the stretch last year, but they have a key addition in Jimmy Snuggerud, who came on late in the season into the playoffs. He actually performed decently well in the playoffs, and it looks like he's just going to be given some top 6 minutes right from the start. All signs are pointing that direction anyway. And then Pius Suter was acquired this offseason as an unrestricted free agent, and then in the Bolduc trade, they acquired Logan Mailloux from the Montreal Canadiens, adding another right-handed defender on the back end, potential power play quarterback as well, who's done some good numbers in the AHL the last couple of years. Overall thoughts on the departures and additions here, Blake?
Yeah, I mean, not too much, but Zach Bolduc for Logan Mailloux, I'm not sure I understood that trade or what the motivation was behind it. Obviously, they must see something in Logan Mailloux. Obviously, he's a good prospect, but Bolduc was cooking. He was cooking towards the end of the year. So that's an interesting move there. Jimmy Snuggerud, I'm excited. Snuggerud, we looked it up, and I think we both messed it up so far, the pronunciation. Snuggerud, Snug Life. Yeah, I think he's going to be a really nice piece for the team this year.
Jimmy Snuggles. All right, let's get into the coaching status here. Jim Montgomery returns for his first full season as head coach. And we saw it last year. Massive positive effect on the Blues nearly from the moment he arrived. They really started to put wins together in the back half of the season once his teachings, I guess, had really taken hold. Some of that hot streak was definitely just some insane efficiency, but I think the buy-in was really instant, and that's a sign of a good coach to me, a good motivator, a good communicator. I think Jim Montgomery is that. The Blues finally had an identity that I think was kind of lacking for the last few years, and I don't think that's going to change going into this year. I'm pretty set in saying that I think Jim Montgomery is one of those net positive coaches.
Yeah, I think he might be one of the better coaches for fantasy, just in the way that he thinks the offense, right? Something that I was digging in a little bit on him, and one of the things he's really known for is sort of prioritizing puck possession, right? So not just chucking pucks, not just one and done, possessions. It's like holding back, cutting back, like, making plays, getting a grade A shot instead of a grade B shot, right? And I think we saw that St. Louis was number one in the entire league at 5-on-5 in finishing, right? They were great. Their expected goals for, not as good. It was 29th, but I mean, expected goals, that metric is also affected by like volume, right? So if you're not taking a bunch of shots from dangerous areas, that stat is going to be lowered, right? That expected goals. So I feel like Jim Montgomery had them playing kind of to their strengths. St. Louis has been an efficient team for a long time, and I think he really got them cooking here. So I'm excited for him here. There's only a couple things, and we'll get into it, but there's a couple players I'd like to see him prioritize a little bit more that might not be in the cards.
Yeah. Let's talk about the power play first here. It really does seem like we're going to get a bit of a 1A, 1B split, most likely. It might lean a little bit more towards a true top power play unit as it did in the playoffs for the Blues. The problem here for fantasy purposes is mostly just that Jordan Kyrou is on that 1B unit. He actually rarely played with Rob Thomas and Pavel Buchnevich on what you would call the 1A unit for most of the year. You look in the playoffs, it was Buchnevich, Thomas, Bolduc, and Snuggles. We're just gonna
Jimmy
go
Snuggles. That's how it goes.
Jimmy Snuggles, and Kyrou was on that second unit with like Shen and Neighbors, who are fine but not exciting, and then Oscar Sundqvist. That's definitely not an ideal player on the power play. Obviously, Holloway was out at this point, so that's an effect, but you would expect him to just replace Bolduc on the 1A unit, which is where he was when he was healthy. So that's kind of what I'm expecting. The power play was clicking, like it was working pretty well, especially towards the back end of the season. So I'm pretty much expecting that to be the case once again. And that's a really good spot for Dylan Holloway. It's a really good spot for Jimmy Snuggles. Not so great for Kyrou.
Yeah, and that's what really stings, because Kyrou, and I can't wait to talk about him, but he's absolutely, to me, the most exciting player on this team, the player that, if given the opportunity, could really pop for fantasy, and he might not get it here on the power play. It is worth noting that the power play, the actual production didn't quite get better under Jim Montgomery, but the expected goals on the power play did get better, right? So they were just a little bit unlucky. Now we've got a full training camp to get in with the proper personnel that he wants to run, and I'm excited to see what happens here. But yeah, I think Jimmy Snuggles, he should get a shot here, but I don't know. Holloway had that great year as well, so I think it's really going to be between those two players, and then Kyrou on power play too, unfortunately.
Yeah, on the back end, you've got Cam Fowler, who really did seem to command that 1A role with that unit. Really seemed like Montgomery actually liked him in that spot, so I am kind of projecting it that way once again, that I don't see any reason at this point in time to suggest that he won't be there. And it was Justin Falk that was running the 1B unit, or second unit, however you want to look at it. And Colton Parayko was out in the cold. Philip Broberg was out in the cold. Now you introduce Mailloux to the mix, who could be even next guy up over Parayko and Broberg. Just something to keep in mind in terms of the priority ranking for defensemen in terms of power play time. Let's dig into the overall projections here. Got to start with Rob Thomas. That's elite singer that Blake loves so very much. We got to start here. I have him for 25 goals, 63 assists, rounding down to 87 points. You have him for 24 goals, 65 assists, 89 points. So we're pretty tight there. I don't think there's too much to say, honestly, about Thomas. I think he has more to give if they did truly run a top power play. For me, this projection to 87 points only includes 22.5 power play points. So you would expect a guy who's as talented at distributing as Rob Thomas is to potentially be able to get to more towards a 30 power play point total if given true top power play minutes, and if the power play is performing as well as we think it should. So that's a potential scenario in which you could see a little bit more for Thomas and see him a decent amount over the 90-point mark. So that could be exciting. The bigger problem for Thomas is that he doesn't shoot 166 shots for me, doesn't hit 17 hits for me, decent enough blocks, I guess 53 blocks I have him for, but basically all the peripheral stats are just non-existent with Thomas. He's not a big-time goal scorer. He's probably not going to hit 30 goals this year, even if he has a pretty efficient year shooting the puck, just because he doesn't take that volume of shots, and that just makes him a little bit less valuable for fantasy purposes than the raw point total suggests.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add there, besides the fact that I do believe that Robert Thomas is one of the best facilitators out there. Like, this guy makes offense happen, but it's one of the reasons why historically here at A&G, we like to target players that drive their own offense, right? That generate shots and chances on their own, right? Whereas Robert Thomas is one of the best facilitators, like in terms of microstats. This guy's, one of the best in the league at scoring chance assists, right? High danger chances, high danger passes, rush shot assists, all that stuff. He balls out in those metrics. So this is a guy that's really getting it done, and players that get to play with Robert Thomas are going to see the benefit of that. And we'll talk about a couple of those players later on here. But I do think the floor is pretty solid. I think we're looking at 80 points like floor with Robert Thomas, just what he's able to do. Unfortunately, his ADP right now is 40. And that's too high. Like, that's just nuking the value for Robert Thomas on a guy that does rely a little bit on his line mates to convert, right? For him to get the point total that he needs. And like you said, he might struggle to get 25 goals, right? So that's not really a place we like to be for fantasy. But if he's, where do you think Robert Thomas starts to see value? Because to me, like, round 4, like 40 overall, no, right? But if he starts getting into round 4, round 5, like, now I'm seriously considering Robert Thomas as a value.
Yeah, the APL ADP from our mock drafts had him at the back end of the 6th. And right
Dang.
there,
Oh
like,
my
yeah,
God.
that's where I'm taking that value. There's actually other center only players, like Nico Hischier goes right behind him, and I would probably value Nico Hischier a little bit higher because he's not that far behind in points, but
Safer.
provides way more peripherals. So yeah, in a lot of spots, it's just kind of about the other players that go around him that I am prioritizing over him. Like, I'd take Scheifele over him, and he usually goes in a similar stratosphere as well as another center-only player. And then obviously you're oftentimes prioritizing wingers or dual-eligible players over the center-only types. So in APL scenarios, I think he's in a pretty good spot. But obviously, if he's going at 40, that's a little too rich for us. One guy, I guess we could talk through a little bit how we see the lines developing here. Probably seeing Buchnevich reprising his role alongside Thomas, and we do kind of see Jimmy Snuggles as the other member of that top line. Just fits kind of naturally in as the right winger opposite Buchnevich on the other side of Thomas. That would leave the second line to be basically what it was last year when it was going really well, which was Shen, Holloway, and Kyrou. And then that would push Jake Neighbors down to the third line, which is kind of, honestly, if there's any player who took a hit under Montgomery, it was probably Jake Neighbors. So that's the kind of the way that we're laying it out. We're definitely baking in multiple scenarios here. I don't think they're going to just lock these lines in on the first day and leave them that way for the entirety of the season. That never happens, and you can't really project it that way. But by and large, we think that this is going to be the most common combination over the course of the season. And that just basically means that Pavel Buchnevich is going to have a fair amount of value. I have him for 22 goals, 40 assists, 62 points. You have him for 26 goals, 36 assists, 62 points. So really just about the mix of goals and assists there. And the thing with Buchnevich is that he's going super late. And that's making him super interesting, actually, especially given the fact that we're getting center, left wing, and right wing eligibility out of Buchnevich this year. If he's going at the APL ADP of 151, that's a spot that I can really get behind. You're really taking on not a lot of risk, and I do think there's still potential for a 70-point season out of Buchnevich here. And if he only gives you 62, then you're totally fine with that one. So overall, I'm just pretty into what Buchnevich is offering this year at cost, because the cost is basically nothing.
Yeah, the cost of acquisition for Buchnevich is beautiful, right? Like, this is a guy I've found myself drafting in a lot of APL mocks, in a lot of best ball, leagues that we're in here at A&G. And I think 62 is floor. I really feel like that's what he paced for last year. And I feel like there were some things, he wasn't cooking on the power play. He only had 12 power play points last year. We talked about, St. Louis's power play in general. The expected goals were better than the actual goals under Jim Montgomery. So, I think that there's a good chance that bounces up. So maybe he sees an uptick in his power play points. I've only projected him for 16, but he could very well be in the 20s, right? His highest ever is 21. So he's not exactly a huge power play performer, but I could see him matching 20 power play points again, especially if Jim Montgomery starts to go to like a top power play, right? Or prioritizing a little bit more. Buchnevich had a 58% power play share last year. So I just see a lot of ways that he can kind of smash through this 62 point projection, right? He's also been historically a very efficient player. And last year he wasn't. Last 2 years, he hasn't been as efficient as he's been previously. So yeah, you get a coaching change in the middle of the season. Maybe that's a factor as well, right? So I'm excited to see what St. Louis can do here in the upcoming year. And I also think just access to Rob Thomas. I'm not crazy. I'm just a little unwell. Yo.
You had to do it one time.
Yeah. Who let Matchbox 20 slide? I know I've said this before, but I mean, what are we all just like, yeah, this is really good. But deep down, we're like, I'm dead inside. All right. I can't listen to this. This is like cotton candy straight to my eardrums. Okay. Anyways, sorry about that. Robert Thomas, though, the hockey player, he's great. And high danger passes for big time for Robert Thomas. High danger or shots off of high danger chances, big time for Pavel Buchnevich, right? And that should equal a higher shooting percentage, right? Which he didn't have last year. So I think the law of averages says his shooting percentage goes up. We see more goals. I could see him getting 70 points next year.
Yeah, one other thing to note on Buchnevich that I should have mentioned before, St. Louis is tied for 6th in off nights amongst all NHL teams this year. And so having a center, left wing, right wing eligible player who is playing on a lot of off nights is just like a free square for positional flexibility in your lineup. It's just super valuable. Obviously, you are taking a bit of a swing. There might be times throughout the season where he's not going well and you're wondering if you should be cutting Pavel Buchnevich. So he's not quite in that range where you're like, yeah, I'm holding this guy forever and he's never coming out of the lineup. But the upside scenarios exist. The flexibility is unmatched. Big ups for Buchnevich, and obviously the off nights apply to everybody on St. Louis. All right, let's talk about Jimmy Snuggles. I've got him for 16 goals, 28 assists, 44 points. You've got him for 19 goals, 31 assists, and 50 points. Obviously, we have a little bit of difference here. This is actually the player that you are most high on relative to me. So why don't you talk about Jimmy Snuggles and what you see as his potential upside this year?
Yeah, it might be a little bit of a bull case, but I think the potential upside is he stays on top line, top power play all season, right? I mean, that's what he had for his 7-game stretch in the regular season there, and then another 7 games in the playoffs. That's what he was doing. Right. So one of the things I think he brings to the table that is different than some other rookies is the ability to play defense, right? The ability to play all 3 zones. And when you see a guy come out here and play 17 minutes in the playoffs in his rookie season, that is a huge vote of confidence for a really seasoned coach like Jim Montgomery, right? He had no problem putting Jimmy Snuggles out there for 17 minutes. So I feel like that's a vote of confidence. It reminds me of Lane Hudson getting the 20-minute treatment at the start of last season by Martin St. Louis, right? I just feel like there's some meat on the bone here for Jimmy Snuggerud. So also digging in on some of his stuff and over at Elite Prospects there, like he's a big time offensive play driver, right? Great playmaker, and also generating his own individual shots and chances. So if he's playing with Robert Thomas again, the same thing applies to Snuggles as it did to Pavel Buchnevich, right? Like we're just going to call him Snuggles. Yeah, that's fine. It's, if we keep doing it, people will forget about it, right? They'll throw it away. But yeah, I just think that the potential playing on the power play and with Robert Thomas at even strength there, it's like 51 points. Maybe that's a little bit rich, but I feel like if that holds all year, that's probably going to be his floor.
Definitely. Let's keep on going. Talk about Braden Shen. I have him for 18 goals, 29 assists, 47 points. You have him for 17 goals, 27 assists, 44 points. Braden Shen is definitely on the back nine of his career at this point. Very effective real-life player, becoming less and less effective for fantasy purposes. The shot volume has really fallen off for Braden Shen in recent years. I have him projected for only 139 shots this year. Does put up a ton of hits. I have him for 189 hits, so that part is nice. But overall, it's tough to anticipate that Braden Shen is a guy that you're going to want to hold in standard-sized leagues all year long. Maybe in your bangers cats, but again, in categories when you're not getting that shot volume, when you're not really even cresting 20 goals on a baseline projection, Braden Shen is probably best suited as a streamer this year.
Yep, I don't have too much more to add there. He's a streaky player too. Like it's
Mhm.
like he always it just comes out in the wash with Braden Shen. You just got to get him on the right week. But yeah, he's going to be a streamer. I don't see any reason to draft him outside of bangers leagues. I think the production's only going to start to dissipate as opposed to rise up here. But I do always like kind of just rostering the captain. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I feel like there's a little bit there, right? Like he's the captain for a reason. That means he has the coach's confidence, and he's going to be playing in big situations, right? Last minutes of games, things of that nature. So, I mean, there is a little bit of value in Braden Shannon. I think he's going to be first up for streamers.
All right, next up, Dylan Holloway, 29 goal, 34 assists, 63-point pace for me, 25 goal, 34 assists, 59-point pace for you, Blake. And I'm kind of buying what Dylan Holloway is selling with this late season breakout he had here. The all three zone stuff looks really good. The zone entries per 60 is off the wall. Controlled entries per
Yeah.
60, entries with chances, all that looks pretty solid. Good rush offense player. So that stuff looks good under the hood for him there. And that's obviously encapsulating all of the season. And really, he only started to come into his own in the back half of the season, get elevated up the lineup, and really start to make his impact there. Yes, he had some pretty unsustainable percentages through the back half of the year, but over the course of a full season with a fuller complement of minutes over the full course of the season, I do think that this is a guy that should be around this kind of 30 goal, 60 point mark. And this is also a guy who is going to bang your face off. He's got 200 shots in my projections, 184 hits. Like, that's going to play.
He's a beefer. He does that. All right. Yeah, it's this has got to sting. This really has to sting for the Oilers. I saw an interview with Dylan Holloway where he was saying like he just really wasn't happy with his treatment there in Edmonton, and so it's kind of like a revenge signing. He's like, you know what? Yeah, I'll sign with St. Louis. No problem. I'll sign the offer sheet. That's fine. Right. And he just rammed it down their throats. There's no question. To me, the only reason I'm not a little higher on Holloway, like you said, all the microstats, they show it really well. He's got frosted tips, right? So we enjoy that as well. But we got a lot of people vying for the same kind of opportunity that Holloway has, right? We got Kyrou, we've got Jake Neighbors still looking for that power play one time, potentially Jimmy Snuggerud, right? Like that, it just kind of throws a little bit of variance into the mix there where we can't be fully in on Dylan Holloway because I think there's the bones of a 70-point player there, but that's if he's top 6, top power play and being prioritized, right? And I'm not sure that's the case at this point, but I could see that, right? This guy's an amazing skater. He's young. He's going to be 24 this year. Like this is a slam dunk. And you can't help but feel bad, a little bit bad for Edmonton losing Broberg and Holloway, like just the way they played this last season.
All right, next up, Jordan Kyrou, finally getting to him. 35 goal, 33 assists, 68-point pace for me. 34 goal, 34 assists, 68-point pace for you. Look at that. We definitely missed an opportunity here to add one more point to Jordan Kyrou's totals, and we will be rectifying that immediately after the podcast. But either way, Jordan Kyrou, obviously super talented, just seems to be held back, and it's multiple coaches at this point, which is what's making me think that it might not ever just come to full fruition for him, where he's getting that 19 plus minute treatment that we think he deserves, at least from a fantasy perspective, for putting up counting stats. So there's that aspect to Kyrou, but volume shooter, I have him for 243 shots. That part's always going to be there. He doesn't hit a whole lot, but 42 hits, 32 blocks. It's not like it's really hurting you at the end of the day. It really just is about why is he on this 1B or second power play unit, and how much is that going to hold him back?
Yeah, I mean that's really everything. That's holding him back from being a point per game player to me. I think Kyrou has the ability to do that. Again, micro stats, looking under the hood, this guy generates offense like a hot damn. Okay, he's a big time chance contributor. Like just he's all over the ice. He's a great skater. It's just that there's something missing, right? There's something that it's an intangible that we can't quite capture with these advanced analytics that is keeping him from playing big minutes with his coaches, right? Last year, he had almost a minute less of ice time than he did the year previous, right? He got more points, which is great to see, but less ice time. What the hell? It's going the wrong way. And, fun fact, Jordan Kyrou, ADP on Yahoo, 69.
There you go.
So that is nice. But other than that, it's like this is a guy. I have that series where we talk about players of interest, guys that can, do a lot better if they get bumped up the lineup. Kyrou is, leading the charge. This is a guy that you give him 3 minutes on the power play. Right now, we're looking at like 25 power play points. You give him, 18 and a half, 19 minutes. Now we're looking like we're pushing a point per game. So it's just a guy that looks great under the hood that hasn't been able to reach his potential yet. And I'm not sure that it's going to happen this year under Muncie.
Unfortunately, not. Next up here, Pius Suter. This is a huge discrepancy in our projections. We usually don't have anything over 10 points difference, but I'm 11.3 points higher on Suter than you are. I have him for 18 goals, 28 assists, and 46 points. You have him for 17 goals, 18 assists, 35 points. I'm a little bit nervous about this one because this is not a player that I thought I was going to have a major take on this year. I know like nobody's really going out and drafting Pius Suter unless they're in the deepest of leagues, but yeah, it doesn't feel good to be this far apart. So tell me what I'm missing, Blake. What's going on here?
We should almost start with you. I mean, how could you? What are you thinking here? But I mean, this is I was saying to you offline, this guy is going to be an elite 3C. And potentially, like, he can play up the lineup. That's what's so amazing about Pius Suter. And that's what he did with the Canucks last year. But that is the main reason. Like, he got, he secured the bag after a career high season, 46 points in 81 games. But he did that because Pettersson was injured. Miller was gone. There were times in the Canucks year last year, Pius Suter was the number one center. Okay, like listen to some of these ice times that he had in the last few games here. 1746, 2210, 2222, 2055, 2131, 2058. Like 2139, he was playing over 21 minutes a night. They had no one. So, and that's how he got to 46 points, in my opinion. Like, he also shot very efficiently, 18% after his highest previous to that was 13.3 the year previous with Vancouver. He did get a lot of scoring chances. Like, he's really good around the net. He's that kind of player, right? Like a Chris Kreider, like a Zach Hyman, a guy that generates a lot of individual chances. He gets deflections, he gets, rebound chances, but who's he playing with at even strength? I think that he's going to be the third line pretty much all year. And that goes back to what I was saying about Braden Shen as the captain. Do you put your captain as the 3C? Maybe, right? It probably makes sense. I think Pius Suter could be a better 2C than Braden Shen could. But will they do that? Pius Suter comes in his first year with the team. Are they going to, bump Braden Shen down to 3C? I don't know about that, right? And if they don't, now Pius Suter is playing with Jake Neighbors and Nick the Jug Bjugstad. All right. So potentially. So it's just not a great place at even strength, and he's not getting any power play time. So I don't see where the efficiency's coming. The minutes are not going to be there. He's going to get a haircut right off the top of a bunch of minutes. So yeah, like his point pace the years previous was like 35, 36, 40 in his first year with Chicago. So, I mean, this is a guy that can do it, but he needs a lot to go right. And I don't think he's going to get that opportunity here in his first year in St. Louis.
Yeah, I mean, for myself, I don't honestly think he's going to get a big haircut in minutes. He skated 17:21 on average last year, and I think he'll be around that with the Blues this year. I think maybe it might come, not on the special teams units that you want to see, but it definitely wasn't always that way in Vancouver either. I think he's definitely going to play on the penalty kill and some on the power play. And I think there's every chance that at some point in the season he gets moved up the lineup by injury or otherwise, and he gets to play with some of those better players. And I actually think the St. Louis top six is quite nice. So I think he'll get some exposure up there. And yeah, I don't think that it's necessarily a spot worse than it was last year in Vancouver. Yeah, he had some percentages went his way last year, but I think he is like a decently efficient player to begin with. So I will probably take another look at this one. I might give him a bit of a haircut. It does feel a little bit aggressive to me just looking at the raw number at the end of it all, but
save it for your hot take episode, Nate.
Yeah, Pius Suter on the hot take episode. I'm sure everybody wants to hear me wax poetical about Pius
I talked
Suter,
about Martin Pospisil last year, for God's sake.
That's true. Let's talk about a Pospisil neighbor, Jake Neighbors. I have him for, no, it's the worst transition.
I don't know. Yeah, no, it worked if you didn't say anything. Okay, that's fine. We'll edit that out.
We'll edit it in post. 20 goals, 21 assists, 41 points for me, 16 goals, 26 assists, 42 points for you. Unfortunately, Jake Neighbors is one of the players that was, as I mentioned before, hindered the most by Montgomery's arrival. Not a big time shot producer, only having for 119 shots this year. 158 hits is nice, but realistically, you're hoping for 20 goals and a bunch of hits with Neighbors, and you're going to be happy if you get that. He's, in my opinion, never going to see that 1A unit. He's never going to be the next guy up for the 1A unit and the more power
Yeah.
play time. It just really feels like this is a spot where it's going to be really tough for him to exceed in a meaningful way.
Yeah, I do actually like the player. We've liked him in the past. There's been some little spurts of good metrics that he's had, and he did have a nice playoffs with St. Louis. He had 6 points in 7 games, played almost 18 minutes, so that's pretty nice. But pretty low on the power play, and like you said, he's not even the next man up. So he's going to have to do it with no power play, and that's not a great place to be when you're drafting for fantasy. There is some value here because he's a beefer, right? 174 hits, 56 blocks. That's really nice. It's a guy that, again, I think you're going to be streaming. Maybe he's a streamer with benefits if there's some injuries on this team, but yeah, like 40 to 45 points is probably where this guy lives this year.
All right, let's move on to the defense. Cam Fowler, I have for 8 goals, 39 assists, rounding up to 48 points here. Nice spot there. You have him for 9 goals, I guess rounding up to 10 goals, and then 40 assists, 50 points total. So overall, we see Cam Fowler as having a decent offensive potential this year. Similar to Rob Thomas, though, this is a guy who has no peripherals whatsoever. 114 shots, 19 hits is what I have him for, 99 blocks, which is just okay for a defenseman. It's nothing to write home about. And so Cam Fowler, even if he is on this 1A unit all year long, and even if that goes quite well, he's probably, in that 50 to 55 point range in a good scenario, and he's still giving you nothing on peripherals, and realistically, he's just a 4D.
Yeah, but I think he's living up to his name. He's a late night beauty. Your defense is going really quick in drafts this year. Like it's slim pickings towards 10th round and up. You're like, well, who am I getting here? Matthias Ekholm. All right, Jake Wallman. I'll pick up some Oilers. Like I'll take a stab at like Brant Clark. Like meanwhile, Cam Fowler's sitting right there. Right? He's sitting right there. This guy just popped for 10 points in 7 playoff games. That's 117 point pace, folks, for Cam Fowler in the playoffs.
Totally sustainable.
Absolute legend. But it's all dependent on the power play for Cam Fowler, right? Just like it was in Anaheim, only this is a better team. This is a much better team with a better coach and better offensive players. So I like Cam Fowler for 50. I got him for 50. Oh my God. I feel fine with that. And especially where you're getting him. I think it's not a sexy pick, right? But what are you going to do? Go home alone? No, you're gonna pick up Cam Fowler, right? And you're gonna have a nice time. He's on your fantasy team, and this guy's gonna get some run on the power play. And I feel like this is a guy that you probably won't be excited to draft, but at the end of the year you'll still have him on your roster. You'll be like, thank you, Cam Fowler, for your service. Like this is excellent. But yeah, no periffs whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, you look at a headshot of Cam Fowler, and it looks like a guy who'd treat you well, and you'd have an enjoyable evening together. So I think that's
a haircut, maybe. I don't know. He's got to do something.
One other note that I want to make just about all these St. Louis defenders in general is that they do drive a fair amount of offense. I have each of the top 4 defenders here at a 40% IPP at even strength or above, and that's pretty unusual. That's not something you'll usually see. The defense are actually quite involved in creating the offense in this system, and I think these defenders actually all work quite well in Montgomery's system. I think it's actually a pretty underrated reason why the team got as hot as it did down the stretch and gave the Jets such trouble in the playoffs. Is this decor actually really came together in a big way and was a contributing factor both on defense and on offense. So I wanted to note that as well. It's not all about the power play with Cam Fowler. For his points upside, it is for sure, but he can definitely provide some even strength numbers as well. Colton Parayko, I have for 10 goals, 27 assists, 37 points. You have him for 9 goals, 28 assists, also 37 points. Parayko is definitely going to come down off of last year's totals. I don't think that shooting percentage from last year is ultimately sustainable. Unfortunately, last year he shot 12.8%. His previous single season high was the year before at 6.5%, so almost double. And definitely that's going to come back down to earth this year. He scored 16 goals in 64 games last year. Obviously, you see we have him back to 10 goal-ish pace. But that being said, Colton Parayko is a beefer. He does that. 150 shots, 115 hits, 189 blocks. Really good stuff there in my projection for him this year. And so he's still a piece that you can look at late in your drafts. If you're just looking for some floor, maybe he's a good pairing with one of those sleeper defensemen that we've been touting, the Z Williams, the Zane Parex, and you're taking a shot on these guys and you hope they'll get you something, but you also want a fallback option. Maybe Colton Parayko is that guy.
Yeah, he's Old Faithful. He's very safe, right? And it's interesting, this double goal thing. Like, yeah, he had 10 goals in 23-24 and then 16 last year in 24-25. But before that, that wasn't exactly his MO, at least the 3 seasons prior to that, right? So it's hard to say, but obviously this guy is a great player in real life. He obviously made the Canada team there for the Four Nations. He'll be in the conversation. This is not a guy we can rely on really in any way besides, like, in category leagues, he does get boosted up a little bit, but even double-digit goals, we've projected him that way, but that's out of respect. That's like, you just got 16 goals, my man. I just don't see that happening again. And I don't know. Are you drafting Colton Parayko? Is he making your draft in a 12-team league?
It depends how deep it is. Like in the APL, where we're going 20 players deep, then he's definitely draftable in that
Yep.
format. In like a Yahoo standard, probably not, right? He's definitely different conversation when you're having those shallower drafts. So definitely depends. But if you're talking about who could you pick up in the 15th round or something like that, like Colton Parayko is going to be there. So I don't hate it. It's definitely a low upside pick because he didn't really get any power play time last year. They've added a potential power play contender in Logan Mailloux this offseason. There's Philip Broberg, who we'll talk about in a second as well, who could also contend for power play time. It just really feels like there's not a big avenue for upside from this number for Parayko, but he could probably hold down a spot on your lineup all year and you wouldn't feel too bad about it by the end of it. Broberg, I did do a quick projection for. I got him for 7 goals, 29 points. Again, nothing much to write home about here. 122 shots, only 49 hits, 121 blocks. There's nothing really crazy here under the hood. It's another player, though, who, like I said, 40% IPP at even strength. So if he ever did get power play, then I'd definitely be interested in Broberg. But it is going to take power play for him to have fantasy relevance. I think he's like maybe still just like a little bit of a younger version of Cam Fowler in the statistical profile, not necessarily in like an on ice profile. But
He's got it on the business card. Yeah, Cam Fowler light.
maybe in another 5 years, we're talking about Philip Broberg being the late night beauty. Who knows? Let's move on to Justin Falk, though. He is actually getting some power play love here. We have him. I have him for 7 goals, 30 assists, 37 points. You have him for 7 goals, 27 assists, 34 points. Pretty close on this player. Again, feels like a little bit of a low upside swing because he only gets to 37 points, even with 11 power play points for me. The peripherals have kind of fallen off with Falk. He used to be a big time shooter, big time banger, and now I've only got him for 130 shots, 94 hits, 115 blocks. None of those are, raising the roof for you, getting you really excited. I guess I have him for 80 PIMs if you play in a PIMs league, so maybe that's of a little bit more interest. But
Oh my.
basically, Justin Falk is a pull pull in case of emergency type player, similar to Parayko. I see them actually as pretty similar in terms of fantasy outcomes this year.
Yeah, and it's weird. Like, I feel like a couple years ago, you say Justin Falk or Colton Parayko, you're going, "Oh, I'll take Falk all day. That's nice. There's some offensive upside there." But I don't think that upside is there anymore. He's kind of developed into a different style of player. When you look under the hood with Justin Falk, the micro stats are terrible, right?
Yeah.
Even the defensive micro stats aren't awesome. So I don't think it was a great year for him. Yeah, I think he's got a little bit more in the tank. He only paced for 34 points last year, but I mean, I've got him for 34 again. You've got him for 37. that's probably where he lives, right? And the periffs are down. My man, what are you doing? You're making me go draft Colton Parayko. I don't know about this. I'm going to get Cam Fowler light Philip Broberg. I think that makes sense. Damn, imagine if Philip Broberg, like, who's your favorite player growing up? He's like, Cam Fowler. Has anybody ever said that? Because if anybody knows that, I would love to get that quote if you could just send that to us, because someone should want to be like Cam Fowler. He's a great person, right? Yeah, he's got a
Kind
beautiful head of
eyes
hair.
too.
Yeah, very kind eyes. Yeah, I mean, you just lock in and like, you want to be on my fantasy team? Let's do it, right? Yeah, I feel good about that.
All right, top 3, Blake. Give it to me.
Give it to me, Neil. I got Pavel Buchnevich as my number 1. I love the value there. And I put Robert Thomas on here because I just love the player. I don't like the value, right? We talked about the ADP there, but I do really trust the player. So if you're in the market for like a point per game player, I think that's his floor, right? With his ability, as long as he's getting the ice time, he's a great penalty killer as well. So I do like Robert Thomas, maybe not at the value that he's showing right now, but I'm putting him up here as well. And Jimmy Snuggles, I got him as number 3, just for the upside. If he does get line 1, power play 1, I think there's 50-point potential, maybe more. Maybe we're looking at a Calder nomination here for Jimmy Snugs.
Yeah, I didn't have Jimmy Snuggles on my top 3, but I'm pretty into the idea that there's a lot of ceiling scenarios for him this year if everything goes right. So I really don't mind that as a late round stab. For myself, I've got Holloway number 1 here. I think that you voiced some concerns about him maybe not being that guy. I think he's unique enough in what he brings to that top 6 that he will be the player who's elevated over the other players. Obviously, I'm just saying that I'm a lot more confident in that than you are. And I tend to believe a lot of what we saw from him in the back half last year. And I'm a little bit more excited about the potential upside beyond the baseline projections of around 60 points and the potential that he gets to like 70 points. Like this could be on what we thought Andrei Svechnikov was going to be. That's definitely in the range of outcomes this year, and you're not having to pay for it. In the APL, he mock drafts, he was going at 93. And if you flip over to Yahoo, I looked at it the other day. I did talk about him as an underrated banger league beefer, and he's going at pick 100 on Yahoo. So you're not having to pay an extreme price. I thought this was going to be everybody's favorite sleeper. He's going to get steamed up into like the 7th round to 6th round even, and we're going to have to pay some huge price. I'm not seeing that in drafts this year, and I'm pretty in at cost because I see a lot of upside. Pavel Buchnevich is number 2. I flip-flopped these two a little bit. 1A, 1B, whatever you want to call it. I love both of them at cost this year for all the reasons we've mentioned. And then I'll throw Cam Fowler some love because of those kind eyes at number 3. Next up, Tampa Bay Lightning. Nothing much going on here. Nick Perbix is the only key departure, which obviously is not going to move the needle for fantasy purposes. The key additions were mostly done at the trade deadline last year. Yanni Gourde, Oliver Bjorkstrand. They added Pontus Holmberg, who's basically the biggest player of note this offseason, and that's obviously nothing for fantasy purposes. Let's talk about the coach, though, because John Cooper is still the coach here, and he is still elite. The Lightning will be good as long as he's behind the bench. Like, I think they could roster the Boston Bruins team from last year and put John Cooper behind the bench, and he would probably get that team to within sniffing distance of a wild card. Like, I just have all the belief in the world in John Cooper getting the most. There was actually, I was watching some PWHL content last year, and all of the ladies from the PWHL, all the players, like just raved about John Cooper and how he was like the best person, and they just wanted to pick his brain about hockey forever because he had just so much knowledge about everything they were talking about. So I love to hear that just from like different sources, not just from within the league, which can, as we all know, can kind of be an old boys club sometimes, but outside the NHL as well. I just love to hear that. I think the world of John Cooper as a coach, and I think that he's going to get the most out of Lightning every single year.
Yep. I don't have too much to add. Obviously, this guy's elite for fantasy in particular. Like, he's going to lean heavily on the top guys there, as he should. This top 6 is going to eat. That top power play is going to eat. And that's what we love for fantasy here.
Absolutely. Power play, Kucherov, Point, Gensel, Hedman are the returning locks. Hedman did come off the power play for a short time for Darren Radish last year, and then immediately after that, Darren Radish was like basically shelved as like a third pair don't use him, if at all, like 13 minutes a
Right.
night for the last part of the season. So I'm not too concerned. They're going to have to use Radish more than that for the course of the season this year, but I'm not too concerned about Radish taking that top power play over. There's probably just some like small injury that Hedman was working through, and so they just figured they could take a few minutes off for a few games, and then he went right back on there. So I have a big projection on Hedman. I think he's locked in as top power play once again. Then you're looking at the fifth here. Brandon Hagel makes sense. Obviously, big time breakout year last year, had some pretty crazy percentages, which are probably going to come down. But even if they do, you're still looking at a really, really efficient player. And we love that for fantasy. Makes sense as the fifth, but it seems for whatever reason they've been really content to let Hagel make his hay shorthanded and at even strength. And he has been doing that. And so that leads me to my question for you, Blake. Will Oliver Bjorkstrand get another shot on the top power play this year?
The jerk store, Oliver Bjorkstrand. I mean, I love Oliver Bjorkstrand. I've liked him, loved. I've loved Oliver Bjorkstrand for years, but I wasn't too impressed with what he was able to do last year in a really nice situation here. And granted, yeah, you come over and try and acclimate yourself to a new team, a team that's already well established. It's going to take some time. So, we'll see what happens in training camp, but I think it's going to be Hagel right off the bat. I think that makes sense, right? It makes sense for them to try and make that work as well. But yeah, I think Bjorkstrand's in the mix for sure. He'll get a cup of coffee there, just like Darren Radish did. What the hell? Yeah, that didn't make any sense to me. But it reminds me, I interviewed Matt Larkin a couple of years ago, talking about Hedman, and he did an interview with Hedman where Hedman disclosed to him, like, yeah, I was just tired. Like he was talking about when Sergachev took over the power play for Hedman that one year. He's like, I was just tired. They had played like, Stanley Cup playoffs like for 3 years or 2 years in a row, or whatever it was, right? He's like, so that type of stuff happens out there. And that's what Hedman said was the reason, or one of the main reasons that Sergachev played. So that might be one of the reasons that Darren Radish played as well, like you said, Nate. So we could see him there again, but, Hedman's going to get the full complement of power play minutes, I think. And I think Hagel will as well.
All right. Let's move over to the actual projections here. Braden Point, we see pretty similarly. I have him for 43 goals, 46 assists, 89 points. You have him for 46 goals, 41 assists, 87 points. I don't know what much more there is to say about Braden Point. He's a pretty appropriately rated player, in my opinion. 30 power play points probably in the bag, about 210 shots I have him for. Not going to hit or block too much. Not going to give you any penalty minutes, but Braden Point is going to give you 85 plus points every single year and might spike up plus 90 here and there as well. I feel quite confident about that projection.
Yeah, me too. When you get to play with a man named Nikita Kucherov on the daily, yeah, you're going to have a high shooting percentage, right? And you should be able to sustain that high shooting percentage, which Braden Point absolutely has. Three straight years of 20% and over for a shooting percentage. And these are full seasons. So yeah, it makes sense when you're playing with elite offensive players, and Braden Point is no slouch, right? This guy fits perfectly into what Kucherov does. I would love to see, I mean, I don't want to see this, but it would be interesting to see Braden Point away from Kucherov. Like, what is he able to do? Like, Braden Point, first off, is an amazing skater. He's super fast. He's also a zone entry machine. This guy does that, right? That lead to chances. So he's not fully reliant on Kucherov to do that, although it is Braden Point and Kucherov that are sort of handling those duties, getting into the zone and setting up, where Jake Gensel sort of gets to biz, sets up, and fires away. But yeah, I mean, this guy is so safe, and it's weird to project the guy over 20% shooting percentage and call him safe, but I just don't see any other way that he's not going to get to this projection, which I have 86, you have 89. Like, he's got 90 to 95 point ceiling as well.
For sure. Next up, Jake Gensel, I have for 41 goals, 46 assists, 87 points this year. You have him for 40 goals, 41 assists, 81 points. This is one of our bigger differences, 6 points in our projections on this team. So we could dig in for a second here. I have him for 30 power play points, 20 minutes average time on ice. What do you got over there for Jake Gensel, Blake?
Yeah, I got 28. And what 28 power play points? And what was the other metric you mentioned, Nate?
Time on ice.
Time on ice, yeah. Just over 20 minutes. So he's playing a ton. He's getting good power play points there.
Yep. So it's probably a little bit more on the efficiency side. I have him for 64% IPP at even strength. I have him for 31.5 shots per 60 on ice shots per 60, that is, and 12.75% on ice shooting percentage.
Yeah, I'm a little bit lower IPP. I got a 61% IPP. Shots for per 60, I've got 31.24, so that's fine. But the on ice shooting percentage is a little bit lower as well, 12.38.
Okay.
So just a
So a
bit
bit of
off the
it
top.
there. Yep. It's not too much. It's not the biggest discrepancy that we've had, but definitely I'm a little bit higher on Gensel here. I think there is probably a scenario where it gets a little bit better for him in year two, where he's just had another year with this team playing with Kucherov. There's a pretty good chance that one of these years he detonates for 50 goals. I think that's definitely possible playing alongside Kucherov. Same way Point had that one year where he really went off.
Yep.
Could happen for Gensel. Maybe I'm baking in a little bit of more optimism than you are, but I do really like the player. See him going in the third round a lot this
Yeah,
year, and that's money in
crazy
the bank
value.
to me. Nikita Kucherov, I have for 40 goals, 87 assists, 127 points. You have him for 40 goals, 86 assists, 126 points. I don't know what much there is to say about Kucherov, but he should be the number 3 pick in every single draft this year. I don't understand people taking Draisaitl over him, really. Like, Kucherov even shoots a lot more. He's added more shooting to his profile. I have him for
Mhm.
286 shots this year, so he's giving you even more peripheral floor. He's giving you better power play numbers than Draisaitl. Probably a few less goals, I guess, at the end of the day, but his baseline projection for points is like 10 to 15 points more than Draisaitl. Like, Kucherov is an absolutely elite superstar, and he should be the third pick.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add. Just the level of creativity that this player has is off the wall, right? Like, in terms of pure offense, he might be the best. I don't know. He's not the best skater, right? But like he just the way he even enters the zone, right? Just the deception that he has. Like, he's so crafty, and he's obviously makes his teammates a hell of a lot better. Yeah, you might not get the goal production from Kucherov as you would with Draisaitl, but I feel like it's way safer to pick Kucherov. Remember when this guy was known as injury prone, right? And people weren't drafting Kucherov, right? This is like he's had the last 3 seasons 82 games, 81 games, 78 games, right? He's good to go. And yeah, I feel like third overall makes total sense. I don't think there's any situation where I'm taking Dry over Kucherov.
All right, let's move to the second line here. Anthony Cirelli had a pretty big year last year. This year, I've got him for 23 goals, 31 assists, 54 points. You have him for 23 goals, 27 assists, rounding up to 51 points. So pretty similar overall. Obviously, Hagel drove a lot of that offense, and Cirelli was a little bit along for the ride in terms of the offense, but definitely Cirelli has a well-established reputation as one of the better defensive centers in the league, is able to take some huge minutes shutting down other teams' best players. Has good block numbers as a result. Not a big time shooter, not a hugely efficient scorer or a major shot volume player, but I like Anthony Cirelli. I just don't think there's a situation in which he's like super valuable as a center only player for fantasy purposes.
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, amazing player in reality. For fantasy, it's so, right? Like, I think he's streamer level in fantasy. I like, because look what he was able to do last year. Yeah, 60-point pace, but that was off of efficiency. That was off of crazy shorthanded numbers as well. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
7 shorthanded points last year. So that's great. I'm not saying he can't do that again, but am I banking on it for fantasy with a center only at that point in the draft? Like, I think there's probably better options out there, but I mean, this is one of the reasons why Tampa is so good. You have one of the best, if not the best, top line in the league. And then you've got this guy centering your second line. Like, he just played with the Four Nations as well. This guy's, his acumen defensively is, top notch. So he's a great player in real life. I just don't see how he's going to come close to matching the 60-point pace he did last year.
Right, Brandon Hagel, I have for 32 goals, 49 assists, 81 points. You have him for 34 goals, 51 assists, rounding down to 84 points. We obviously both think the world of Hagel, the player. It really is about that power play. And even if he's on there, like, I have him for 2.5 time on ice on the power play, which is more than I have Bjorkstrand for, but I do kind of see a little bit of a split. They might try one way, they might try the other way for points throughout the season. And either way, Hagel has never actually been an efficient player when he's been on the top power play. It's never like actually clicked when he's been there for him personally. The power play itself in Tampa is
Yeah.
going to be just fine, but Hagel has never really factored into it even when he's gotten the opportunity. And I think it just might be he doesn't have like a clearly defined role. Great player, but doesn't have like a role that really matters. And you do see this in some power plays. We talk about Zach Hyman having a super low IPP on that Edmonton power play, really valuable member of the power play. He just doesn't factor into a huge percentage of that power play's offense. And I think that might be a similar case for Hagel, which might hold down his upside. That being said, Hagel is actually a player who's been going later in drafts than I expected this year, and I don't really know why. And so I'm actually pretty into him once again this year.
I mean, I think for the reasons that you're talking about, right? Like people look at it and go, okay, yeah, he had a really efficient season. Obviously, shot, reasonably like 15.5%, but 90 points with only 11 points on the power play. Big time on ice numbers, but he had 7 shorthanded points as well. So yeah, I think people are a little bit wary. And I don't know. I like the value on Hagel as well. Obviously, I don't see him getting to 90 again, but I have him getting more than the 11 power play points he got last year, even with that low IPP. And you described it to a T. Like this is a guy that's out there. He's valuable. He's really good at puck battles, right? This is a guy that will go to the corners, win the puck, get it to Kucherov. But when you have Kucherov, Point, and Gensel and Hedman on your power play, like the fifth guy, like we've had Nick Jones, Paul out there. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter, right? But Hagel's way better than Nick Paul, and I see him. I've projected him for 18 power play points, right, to get him to sort of buffer the potential regression he might have with his on ice shooting percentage and things like that. Sorelli being less efficient as well. So I'm really comfortable with the player. I think point per game is a lock and big time minutes. And then what if he does hit on the power play? What if they change things up? What if he becomes like a 20 power play point guy, 25 even? Like we're looking at a top 5 power play here, and he's probably going to be on it.
Mm-hmm. There's a good chance that he even exceeds that projection as well. In the APL mock ADP, he's going in the early 4th. On Yahoo, he's going in the mid 5th. I'm smashing that value.
Dang,
Point per
let's
game
go.
player in that range. Absolutely love that. Left wing, right wing eligibility as well. Oliver Bjorkstrand, I have for 22 goals, 26 assists, 48 points. You have for 22 goals and only 20 assists for 41 points. So I'm a little bit higher on Bjorkstrand here. I think maybe I have a little bit more of a power play share for him than you do. I have him for 14 power play points. What do you got there?
That's a good question. I've got him for 9.
Yeah, so that's pretty much all of
Yeah.
it right there. Is just
Yeah.
me factoring in a little bit more of a split at some point throughout the year. I think, yeah, basically between Bjorkstrand and Hagel, they'll probably go back and forth at least once throughout the year, probably twice. And it's really just not going to matter. The Tampa Bay power play is going to do its thing, and whoever that fifth member is not going to have a material effect on its actual efficiency. So I think Bjorkstrand will get a chance there at some point, and he'll probably pick up a few power play points because of it. Am I drafting Oliver Bjorkstrand, like hoping for some huge year this year? Not really. I think it's possible, but definitely not likely.
Yep. I don't have too much to add, but I mean, could be a sneaky streamer, right? Especially with that power play one potential. And he absolutely has it. Like I projected Hagel for 3 minutes on the power play, but I could see that, maybe 2.5, right? And then you throw that extra 30 seconds over to Oliver Bjorkstrand, right? This is a guy that's had 25 power play points just a couple seasons ago with Seattle. He did that in Seattle. So he's got some good tools on the power play, but again, is that the type of player they need on the power play? A guy like who should be at the end of passes, right? And taking shots. They probably need a guy, that's able to get the puck like Brandon Hagel and sort of play that bumper position, whereas Bjorkstrand's probably wanting to be on the flank firing 1-Ts, right? So it just depends on what John Cooper wants to do. I'm sure he'll get some time there, but yeah, I can't get to 48 there. I mean, 41, sure. I feel like this is a player that is going to do really well on a lesser team, right? And on a good team like Tampa Bay, he's going to get buried a little bit, at least for fantasy.
Yeah, I don't mind that take either. Let's move on to the third line here. We'll just touch on these players briefly. Probably not going to be relevant for fantasy, but worth mentioning. Nick Jones-Paul, I have for 20 goals, 18 assists, 38 points. You have him for 19 goals, 20 assists, 39 points. Connor Geeky, I have for 14 goals, 17 assists, 31 points. You have him for 15 goals, 14 assists, 29 points. The interesting part with Geeky is the 169 hits that I have him projected for, so he does that. And if there's anybody who like kind of leaps up in this lower part of the Tampa Bay lineup and kind of takes away a role from somebody else, I do think it would be Connor Geeky. Young player, good pedigree. His brother Morgan Geeky took a big step playing alongside Pasternak. Is it unfathomable to say that Connor Geeky could do something similar? Say there's a Gensel injury and they have to elevate somebody, Geeky goes to the top line just as a role player, and all of a sudden you actually have something that works a little bit. I think there's at least some scenarios in which we're picking up Connor Geeky throughout the year. Nick Paul, I really don't see it, to be honest.
No, remember when he was getting all that power play deployment, and like,
Yeah.
Please, like, just get Hagel out there. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? But again, like, they needed a certain role there on the power play, right? And so it kind of goes back to the Bjorkstrand thing and even the Hagel thing. Maybe Nick Paul gets it, there is potential there, right? It all depends on what they want to, what kind of look they want with the power play there. But yeah, I think Connor Geeky's the one I would be interested out of those. Also, go check out this guy's hair. He's got a beautiful head of hair, amazing lettuce coming out the back of the lid there. Really nice stuff. Absolute beefer as well. 6'4", 207. My God. Yeah, I like that. You sure you aren't interested? Can I interest you in some Gage Gonsalves here this year, Nate?
No, you cannot.
Oh, dang. Okay. All right. That's fine.
Let's talk about Victor Hedman, though. I have a big projection for him: 15 goals, 56 assists, 71 points. You have him for 15 goals, 53 assists, 68 points. So we're in the same range there. I think we know what Hedman is. It is kind of unfortunate. He used to be a really solid banger as well, and that's really fallen off. I'm for 186 shots, which is pretty solid, but only 47 hits now, 134 blocks, which is pretty good still. And it's just a player that I feel pretty confident about. He feels like the end of a tier to some extent to me as well, where he goes and drafts in the third round, sometimes towards the later end of the third round. And I'm pretty okay with that there, getting this kind of 70-point potential locked in, power play one, absolute stud defenseman.
Yep, not too much to add. Honestly, the thing that can bring him down is potential fatigue, like we mentioned, right? Like if he needs to take a little break and Darren Radish gets out there and gets the biz. Have you ever eaten a radish with some salt on it, Nate? Do you ever do this?
I've never done that.
What the hell's a radish, first off? Like, why? Who put that on earth? Because and
What
who
is
was
a
like,
duck?
and yeah, exactly. Like, do ducks eat radishes? I don't even know. That's a question for another pod, but I don't know. Like we gave my daughter, like my wife likes radishes. And so she cut little, she's like, do you want some of this, honey? She's like, yeah, puts it in her mouth. She's basically, it was like projectile vomiting right off the top. I'm like, yeah, why would anyone eat a radish? I don't know. Just hit me up in the comments if you're into radishes, if you enjoy like a nice radish salad. Okay. I want to know about that information, but back to Victor Hedman. Yeah, I like the floor here. The ceiling, yeah, maybe gone away a little bit, but very efficient player. Great power play numbers. Periffs are going down a little bit. That stinks, but he's awesome.
All right, Janice Jerome Moser. I did not do a projection for. You did, bless your heart. 3 goals, 19 assists, 22 points. Do you see any fantasy upside for Janice Moser this year, Blake?
Is that his name, Janice Jerome?
Yeah.
Oh, it's probably Yanis. I don't know, but maybe.
Yeah, probably.
But
what is he, Swiss?
I don't know. You
We
know what?
gotta
I
look it up
should know.
now.
Yeah, this is terrible. But JJ Moser, I liked him. Before he came to Tampa here, I think there's some bits and pieces, right? But he's not going to be an offensive defenseman by any means. They don't. Their offense isn't coming from the back end besides Victor Hedman. So yeah, he was able to do a lot of good stuff defensively though. If you dig in on microstats, I mean, entry denial rate, he was in the 85th percentile. Entry chance prevention, which is basically gapping up and stopping entries that lead to scoring chances. He was in the 86th percentile. So yeah, he's just a nice piece there on the Tampa blue line. I don't know. I mean, if Victor Hedman goes down with an injury, who's taking power play one? Is it Darren Radish or does JJ Moser maybe have a little stake there?
Yeah, I've projected it as Radish, but you could tell me that Moser could get in there. It is Giannis. I have confirmed via the NHL pronunciation guide. He is Swiss, so it is Giannis. Moser, his year last year was actually pretty terrible with the Lightning, injury filled as well. So that's kind of got me off it a little bit. But you could tell me there's a scenario in which he is the power play 2 guy for this year and he gets on power play 1 due to a Hedman injury. So I guess there is that potential outcome to speak of. Darren Radish, last one here, 6 goals, 27 assists, 33 points for me, 7 goals, 28 assists, 35 points for you. Again, he was really demoted by John Cooper at the end of last year, and I'm not confident even at 33 points this year. There's a world in which he is like legitimately off the team and they just go pick somebody up off waivers and play him over Darren Radish this year. That's a real possibility for me. And so Darren Radish, we have to mention him because right now he kind of projects as the power play 2 guy, but there's every possibility he is a nothing.
Yeah. I mean, not as a person. He's a good person. All right. He's not a nothing,
Well,
Darren.
we don't know
all
that.
right?
He could be a terrible person.
Actually, that's true. I don't want to stake my claim on that. I don't know the man personally. Actually, funny story. I used to work at Milestones. There's a restaurant out here in Canada, and there was this guy named Darren. And just to bug him, every time we'd go to the bathroom, we'd be like, "I got to go take a Darren." Right? We'd say that. I got to go take a Darren. Right. So that's what I think about when Darren Radish. I got to go take a Darren. And I still say that to my kids. They're like, "Who's Darren?" I'm like, "Don't worry about it. Just don't bug me. All right. Get away from the door." Yeah, you look at what Darren Radish did in the playoffs here, and it wasn't pretty, right? He averaged 14 minutes time on ice in the 4 games that Tampa played. That's not a good sign. So, yeah, I think there's 2 possibilities there. Yeah, he gets back to sort of that PP2 role with the team here. He did have a good year, or he gets demoted kind of the way he was towards the end of the season, and we don't see him again, and we get Giannis Jerome Moser to the moon. Am I right, Nate?
I could see it happening.
All right.
Fair enough.
Fair enough on that.
Top 3 targets, Blake. Let me have it.
Oh, you got it, buddy. Yeah, I got Victor Hedman as my number 1. Like you said, he's kind of the back end of a tier, but I feel like it's just a guy I'm going to have in a lot of my drafts because all these mocks that I've been doing, I haven't been able to lock up a really solid D. Just kind of where I am in the draft, and I found that Victor Hedman is always staring me in the face, kind of end of round 2. Even early round 3, Hedman's sitting there sometimes, and I think you just got to do it, right? You're getting the back end of a tier there, but I don't mind it. So give me some Victor Hedman there, safe floor. Brandon Hagel, we talked about why, dual eligibility, the crazy value on Yahoo, and then Gensel. Gensel is dropping in drafts, and I don't understand it, right? And I absolutely agree with you that there's 50 goal potential here. This guy got 17 goals on the power play last year. Mm-hmm. Damn. He's been a perennial second rounder for as long as I can remember. And, one more year with Tampa Bay, a full off-season training, preparing, learning the systems, like he's going to be good to go next year. So I'm excited about those 3 players.
Yeah, I got the same 3, slightly different order. I've got Hagel first, just because that value seems to be pretty insane to me. Hedman, for the reasons you mentioned, his ADP on the APL mocks is, where did he go? 29.5. So what's that, the mid-third? Pretty good spot for Victor Hedman there. And then Jake Gensel as well. He's going in kind of the early third, and I love it in that spot. So definitely think all these players are decent values at cost this year. All right, at the midway point here, got to talk about the Apples and Ginos Fantasy Hockey Draft Guide this year. It's out. It's got 375 plus player projections. It's got 32 NHL team previews. We've identified all the top sleepers. We've got everything you could possibly need in there. I wrote a massive article about how to outdraft the smartest player in your draft. That's in there. There's just so much information in these 167 pages. You got to get your hands on it. Patreon.com/ApplesGinos, and it will be right there for you. Link in the description as well. There is probably still some time to join the Apples and Ginos APL, the Apples and Ginos Patron League. Applesandginos.com/APL to learn more info. It's a league that we're putting together this year. Drafts have begun, but we are still putting together at least 1 more division and potentially 2 if we get enough signups in the next little bit here. So get yourself in there, $2 a month tier on Patreon, and fill out the intake form that you will find there. If you need help finding it, just let me know and we'll get you there. But applesandginos.com/APL if you are interested in some great competition this year. All right, Blake. We got to talk about the skater projections as well. I forgot the slide was in here, but applesandgeos.com/skater-projections. They have a file up there which contains both of our projections and an average of our two projections, if that's the way that you prefer to do it. If you think Blake has some good takes and I occasionally have some good takes and you just kind of want to take the average of that there, then you can do that. There's also some cats modified sheets for cats in there, courtesy of 18 skaters. That'll definitely help you out if you are drafting from a cats league. So we've got you covered. Whatever your league is, you can use our projections and figure out who the best players to draft are this year. All right, Blake, let's talk about some Leafs. Are you ready for this?
I can't wait, buddy.
All right. Key departures, guy named Mitch Marner, who you may have heard of before, also Max Pacioretty. Key additions, a lot of movement this offseason for the Leafs. Matias Michelli comes in, Nicolas Roy comes in, Dakota Joshua, Brandon Carlo, and Scott Lawton joined the team at the deadline last year with varying degrees of success. What's your overall take on this? What does this mean for the Leafs offense this season?
That's really going to be the question. I mean, when you lose a player like Mitch Marner, it's like he was one of the guys. He was the number 2 player here on this team, and now he's gone, right? And he had his own gravity. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. But I think that the Leafs did a nice job kind of filling the gaps here. And we'll talk about these players, but Matias Michelli is a really low risk ad that I like. Getting Nicolas Roy, when they could have just lost Marner for nothing is a win to me. And then Dakota Joshua is a nice piece here. I saw him play in Vancouver. He last season was not, I don't know if we projected him. I'm not sure if you did, but just a quick thing on Dakota Joshua. What you saw last year was not, that's not what Dakota Joshua is, right? He was dealing with, recovery from testicular cancer, and he just couldn't get his legs. So I think you're going to be in Leafland. I think you're going to be really happy with what you get there from that player. He's going to be an amazing third liner that has a little bit of efficiency as well. He can put the biscuit in the basket. So nice pieces, but yeah, it stings losing Marner, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you can never replace a 100-point player with a bunch of other players. That being said, like one of the Leafs' true failings as a team last year was that the bottom six was wildly ineffective. And so they have kind of addressed that this year and hopefully made that a bit more of a strength over the course of this year. We'll see if the bottom six can win some minutes this year. For fantasy, though, you have to view it as a net negative overall. Coaching status, Craig Berube, he really did get the Leafs to buy in year one. There was some question for me about whether it would really work for Craig Berube as a very different style coach from Sheldon Keefe to actually get the Leafs playing this kind of heavy hockey playoff style from day one. Emphasis on these quick counterattacks, cycle game in the offensive zone. But it really did actually, one thing that I didn't really think about last year is that really does kind of lean into the skill sets of some of their top players. Austin Matthews, Matthew Nyes, John Tavares, Willie Nylander, all really difficult players to knock off the puck when they have it on their stick. All guys who are really good at taking the puck away as well if you've got it. So I think that Berube did identify some strengths here and was a good fit. What's your thoughts here, Blake?
Yeah, I mean that's great analysis right there. I enjoy that. Nate, I'm learning something from you tonight, which I always enjoy. But yeah, I agree. It's I think just another season under Berube, and we'll be looking good here. But obviously he's holding them accountable. They needed a change, right? And even this change with Marner now too. It's like they had their window, and now they kind of had to go a different direction. And Berube is obviously a big part of that. And yeah, he's got him playing a good brand of hockey, defensively sound, right? So for fantasy, I think it works as well, right? Again, like you said, the bottom six here in Toronto, it's, for fantasy hasn't really been ringing our bell, right? And I don't think that it's going to be ringing our bell this year either. So we're still looking at good stuff here for fantasy in the top six and on the power play.
Yeah, I think it is going to be interesting how the Leafs are going to try to generate offense in this post-Marner era. Last year, the raw numbers really fell off a cliff, but it was the efficiency really went high, and so that worked. But yeah, I think that it might be tough to replicate that this year, especially when you're losing a guy like Marner. Let's talk about the power play here. Matthews, Nylander, Tavares, nice, obvious locks here. Nobody is going to debate that. Riley is the boring choice here to comprise the fifth member of the power play once again, but almost certainly gets the first look once again this year. I don't really see another scenario. Like, are they going to go with a 5 forward with Matthias Michelli or Max Domi at the wheel? I really don't see that happening. I think the reason that worked with Marner was because they could trust him defensively,
Yes.
and they definitely can't do that with those two other players. So I don't see a scenario in which it really isn't Riley, at least to start the year. Maybe it goes atrociously and they really have to think about somebody else at the top there. But at least to start, I think it's Riley. You got any different thoughts there?
No, 5 forward power play. I hope we see less of it here this year because it never works. It just doesn't work. And honestly, you got a guy like Morgan Riley here. I'm a big fan of that player. But I mean, I keep thinking back to like 2 years ago or 3 years ago where it was Riley and William Nylander just crushing for the Leafs in the playoffs. Everybody else was dead silent, but Riley was out there just giving it his all. And I've got some love for that player. And yeah, it's been such a long time since he's had a true, like, give him a number one power play share and let's see what he can do, because this is a player that's shown in the past that he can, produce for fantasy.
All right, let's dig in on the projections. We'll talk some more about Riley for sure, but we got to start with Austin Matthews off the top. This is a player that I did a lot of digging into because I thought it was a pretty interesting conversation here about what does it look like? What does life away from Mitch Marner look like for Austin Matthews, because they were such a common duo over both of their careers for the extent of the time that both were in the NHL. So over the last 3 years, Matthews' shots per 60 does drop off a little bit away from Marner, but not by much. We're talking about like 0.5 of a shot per 60, which is not insane. The individual scoring chances for per 60 actually goes up away from Marner at even strength, which is really interesting. And the shooting percentage is actually like a decent amount up, like over 0.5%, which is not nothing over a 3-year sample. So overall, at least at even strength, I'm looking at this and thinking that it's not a massive fall off for Matthews. Obviously, there's some fall off. You can't lose a player of Mitch Marner's caliber and just expect that you're going to be totally fine and everything's going to happen exactly the way it did before. But all that to say, like, Matthews drives his own offense. He's fully capable of doing that. We've seen that in times when Marner's been injured in the past. We've seen it in times when he's been with other players, and it's actually really worked. There is a loud contingent of Leaf fans at one point who were clamoring for them to play Nylander with Matthews because it really worked for a short amount of time. Maybe they try that this year at some point to jumpstart either of those players if they're kind of going slowly. I could see that scenario happening as well. All of that to say, I'm not that concerned about Austin Matthews having some giant fall off. I think those concerns are vastly overblown. That being said, there is a little bit of a haircut here. I actually think Craig Berube's style here and the lower event hockey that he has them playing is a bigger impact to Matthews' potential for a ceiling season than Marner leaving is. And so I have Matthews projected for 50 goals, 50 assists, 100 points. You have him for 55 goals, 46 assists, 101 points. I kind of like your spread there with more goals, a little bit more than mine. But we did see Matthews take a bit more of a distributor role last year than he ever had previously. And I'm not sure how much of that is a function of the Berube system and how much of that is just a function of Matthews deferring shots more than he had in years past because of, the injury situation that he was basically playing through the entire year.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a combination of all, but one of the things that is interesting to me is Matthew Nyes, right? And kind of his come up, whereas Matthew Nyes is very much a net front guy. He's the guy that needs to be at the end of passes, where Austin Matthews should be the one at the end of passes, not Matthew Nyes, but they play together, right? And Austin Matthews has that ability to adapt his game, where, like you said, where he's more of a facilitator at this point, where Matthew Nyes doesn't really have that. Right. So to make things work, and obviously it's a benefit to Matthew Nyes, but not so much a benefit to Austin Matthews, right? He becomes a little bit of a different player. But now you take another amazing facilitator out of there in Mitch Marner, and let's say you throw Matthias Michelli up there, like, Matthews has got to be the hammer again. He's got to be the guy at the end of passes, right? So, and I really feel like his goal total is going to come up, and they're going to make a little bit of an adjustment there because he's going to have to do things a little bit more himself. This season coming up reminds me of the season that Stamkos had, I don't know, I think it was his second to last season in Tampa Bay, where he was off the top line with Braden Point and Kucherov. He was playing with Cirelli and Hagel, and his IPP went way up. His shots went up, and he just popped off. And I feel like Matthews is going to have a season like that, where he's driving play even more, because he can't rely on Mitch Marner, who's an amazing play driver in his own right. Matthews is the guy now driving all the play on this line. And, his line mates, potentially Matias Michelli and Matthew Nyes, they're going to have to find a way to adapt around him. And Craig Berube obviously is going to have to figure things out. But yeah, this guy is good to go. He's definitely no passenger here. 69 goals he had in 23-24. Will we see that again? Obviously he can. But I'm glad you brought the with or without you stuff with Mitch Marner there, because it just shows you, like, he didn't need Mitch Marner to get these goal totals. Like, he's able to do it on his own, right? But they have to find a system that works for him, and I think they will. 55 seems reasonable to me.
Yep, I definitely think that's reasonable. And worth noting on the power play too, like Marner had a pretty good IPP on the power play last year, but Matthews had even higher. And actually, in previous years, Mitch Marner did not have a very high IPP on the power play relative to some other players. Like Nylander was a focal point more than Marner was in years past. Better shooter, so that makes sense to some extent as well. So on the power play, I think Marner, his effect on that power play is probably a little bit overrated, especially if Riley can just kind of get back to being a decent power play one quarterback. He doesn't have to be exceptional, just decent. So I think that effect on Matthews' game on the power play specifically is also maybe a little bit overrated. Let's talk about Matthew Nyes, though. I have him for 27 goals, 34 assists, 62 points with a roundup there. You have him for 29 goals, 33 assists, 62 points as well. Matthew Nyes is a player that I could see this season going a few different ways. I could see him taking a step back from the pretty insane efficiency he registered last year. Was very, very efficient. Obviously, Mitch Marner not passing him the puck anymore. Maybe some of those high danger looks are not there as much this year, and he's not quite as able to maintain a high shooting percentage just because of that. That being said, we could also see the scenario where Nyes takes another step this year, and there are some who have a pretty strong belief that he still has more to give. And I do see flashes of it where he has this distribution ability that we haven't quite unlocked, I would say. And so he could convert a fair amount of those goals that came by virtue of a higher shooting percentage this year into a bit more of assists. I think he's a pretty intelligent player overall, and I don't think we've seen the ceiling quite yet from Matthew Nyes. So I'm kind of stuck between, Marner's not there anymore. He was really efficient last year. Maybe that comes down, but also I think the player could still take another small step.
Yeah, and his role is more secure with Marner gone, right? Like if he's on a line with Matthews and Marner, he's the spare part, right? But now it's Matthews and Nyes. So, and then the spare part, whoever the third person is on that line, right? Unless it's Nylander, right? Which I don't think they're going to do. So I think he's going to get a hell of a lot more opportunity, and that could bolster his numbers as well. Even though he did have 18 minutes, 31 seconds last year, like I think that's much more secure. His role on the power play is much more secure, right? They're not going to have to run a 5-forward power play to get Matthew Nyes out there. He's going to be out there regardless. And like you said, very intelligent player. The high shooting percentage doesn't bother me at all. Like 19%. This is a guy that generates a lot of scoring chances, and he's playing with elite players, right? You got probably the best shooter in the game. You're going to get some deflections. You're going to get some rebound chances, which really drive that high shooting percentage for Matthew Nyes. So yeah, I really like the player. I do hope that Craig Berube adjusts the system a little bit to kind of feature Matthews a little bit more as opposed to featuring Nyes. I feel like they did that out of necessity, right? And it worked to a degree. Nyes had a great season, but I'd rather see Matthews have a great season and Nyes be the one adjusting.
Yeah. Let's move on to Matias Michelli. I have him for 15 goals, 29 assists, 44 points. You have him for 16 goals, 34 assists, and 50 points, 6.3 points total higher on Michelli than I am. This is the biggest difference in our projections. So you're seeing a bigger potential here for Michelli. Let's talk it through.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this guy, I just feel like he had such a down year last year. We don't even know what kind of player we're looking at. And his role on Utah last year was decimated, right? They had all these up and coming players come up. And Michelli's role, he lost like 2.5 minutes right off his ice time there. And that's going to affect anybody. And when he was out there, he wasn't in the top 6. So I don't know. Let's dig in on Matias Michelli a little bit here.
All right, let's talk about let's start with the power play role. So obviously it's not going to be much here. I don't have him for much of a power play role. I don't even know if he's the next guy up necessarily. I would like him to be personally, but I don't know if anybody else sees it the same way. So I have him for 6.3 power play points. And I have him at 14 minutes 75 or 45 seconds rather average time on ice. What do you got for power play points and average time on ice?
Yeah, I've got him for 3 more power play points. So 9.6 rounded up to 10 power play points. And then I've got him for 15:45 average time on ice on the year.
Yeah, so an extra minute there. I do agree that Michelli is a really interesting player. We've seen this player have some really, really good microstats. Dmitry Filipovich, the PDOcast, released one of their highlight reel packages on Michelli, and it's all just like Marner-esque looking plays. And I know it was cut specifically to look that way, but it still gets me a little bit jacked up
Oh,
because
yeah.
I can't help it. But this is a guy who legitimately, like, if you look at the all 3 zone stuff, this is a guy who legitimately has massive shot assist contributions and is quite adept at rush offense, like absolute elite actually at rush offense, and still good in the cyclone forecheck game that the Leafs employ under Berube. So that gives me some hope here. Really good zone entry guy, so he can take some of that Marner was doing for that line if he is on this top line. The one thing that's kind of weird here is that Michelli was pretty much almost exclusively a left winger in Utah, and I don't know if he's just going to seamlessly transition into a right winger here on this line, but I also don't really see how else they're going to make this work with the current personnel. So there is that part, which is just kind of a weird wrinkle to think through, and I'm not sure that Michelli will get that role. That being said, like, why do you go and acquire Matias Michelli, still got a year at 3.4 million on his contract, if you don't think he's going to play alongside the goal scorers in Nyes and Matthews? Like, to me, that just matchup, that pairing, we saw the proof of concept last year with Marner. It's obviously a much less skilled player in Michelli than Marner. Nobody's saying that they're the same player in terms of skill level, but the general profile of this line looks almost identical if you insert Michelli into that role. And so I think they're going to try to make it work with him and right wing on the top line. So that's obviously exciting. We'll have to see how it goes. He doesn't have a power play role that we can point to, which will obviously limit the upside. If he had a power play 1 role that was really obvious, then we might be getting really excited about Matias Michelli already.
You know, we got dragged a little bit, didn't we, Nate, by just comparing the two, Michelli and Marner.
Yeah.
And we're not saying that, but yeah, like you said, they profile similarly in a few metrics, right? Shot assists being the one, and you got one of the best shooters in the entire league, and now you got a guy that was already like cooking in shot assists on the in the bottom 6 in Utah. Now he's potentially playing with, even if Michelli goes to the second line, let's say he plays left wing, and Max Domi maybe bumps up to top line, or maybe Bobby McMahon gets a chance in the top line. Who knows, right? But I think Michelli's a lock for the top 6, and he's playing with guys that can shoot the puck.
All right, let's talk about that second line. John Tavares, Old Faithful, I have for 35 goals, 40 assists, running down to 74 points. You have him for 37 goals, 33 assists, 70 points. I think John Tavares, we know that he's getting slower year by year, but he's still one of the smartest players in the league for my money, and he's still going to be in the right place 100 times out of 100 throughout the course of the season, and that means that he's going to still be relevant for fantasy purposes. 222 shots, 105 hits, he does all that kind of stuff as well, and they need him even more now with Marner gone, so I don't see a scenario in which his ice time really dips this year for any reason. I think that Tavares is going to be a key cog in making this Toronto offense go once again.
Yep. I don't have too much to add there. I love the scoring chances that Tavares provides, right? He had such a down year in 23-24. Like, we're all like, oh, this guy's, he's at the end of it. It's fine. He's just sailing off into the sunset. Like, he just wasn't converting on his chances, right? And then this last season, bang, 38 goals, buddy. Thank you for your service. So, I feel really happy about John Tavares. again, center only on Yahoo. His ADPs right now is 72.5. I don't know. I feel like I feel like that's like kind of right, maybe where he should be, but maybe a little bit earlier than I'm interested in taking him, maybe just due to age-related decline and also the variance potential with Toronto losing Mitch Marner. But I don't know. How do you feel about Tavares' 72.5 ADP?
I think that's probably in line with where he should be going. Nico Hischier goes only a few picks earlier, and I'm a little bit more interested in that player. He's also going in this range where I do actually kind of really like some of the other shots that we're getting on Matvei Michkov and players like that who have huge upside, in my opinion. So
Yeah.
I end up probably not taking him, but in terms of the actual, where he should be taken by the projection while taking into account the fact that he is center only, I think he's probably appropriately rated right now. Let's talk about Max Domi for a second and not many more seconds longer. 10 goals, 25 assists, 35 points for me, 11 goals, 26 assists, 37 points for you. I think this is a pretty limited player who is probably going to get some top six time this year, maybe even more than last year with Marner leaving. But I realistically don't think that Domi is an effective player. I don't think he's an efficient player. I think he just may get a bunch of minutes and therefore may be worth a stream at some point.
Yep. Not too much to add. Good facilitator. That's kind of what he's bringing to the table. If he gets elevated up the lineup, we're somewhat interested, but yeah, return of the Mac. I don't think so. All right. Go back down to the bottom six, my man, and get the biz.
Willie Nylander next up. Big time star here and a player that the Leafs are going to need to be at his best this year once again. We are almost identical on this player. I have him for 43 goals, 42 assists, 85 points. You have him for 41 goals, 44 assists, 85 points. So Nylander, there's a narrative that I've heard floated that he's going to be better this year than in years past just because they need him to be, and I don't think that's really how the maths. I don't think that really works at all. I don't really see how his role is going to get bigger than it was last year. Like people think he's going to take on more ice time. He's already skating like basically up there with Matthews in terms of the even strength time on ice. So I don't really see where all of this extra time on ice he's supposedly getting is going to come from.
Right.
Maybe like an extra half minute or something, but that's not going to materially change this projection for me. I just think that he's pretty bankable. He's going to provide you a ton of shots. He's going to be maybe even more a featured point on the power play this year. They're going to ask him to shoot even more maybe than in years past when Marner was handling the puck more often. Other than that, I don't really know that there's a scenario in which Nylander gets better or worse with Marner leaving.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm not really sure how that's going to happen, right? Like his on ice shooting percentage at even strength last year, pretty high. It was on the high end, not unsustainable, but high.
Yep.
So that's probably not going to go up. That's going to go down, right? Maybe his IPP goes up a touch, right? But he's already got an insane IPP at 70% at even strength. So, I mean, where's the extra production going to come from? It's going to have to be luck, right? And we're not in the business of predicting luck, right? I feel good about this projection. 86 points, like, yeah, that's bankable, right? And I feel like that's very safe with the touch for more. We saw, obviously, this guy got 98 points the year previous, so he can do that. But, he had 5 more points on the power play that year. This year, he's going into a team that's losing Mitch Marner, right? Who, like you said, maybe have an overrated profile on the power play there, but still, you're looking at a 100-point player on the power play. He's going to make it better, not worse. So we'll see. I could buy the narrative that maybe Nylander has a bigger role on the power play, and maybe that's how he gets there. But, as it stands, I feel good about this projection, and you're looking at him mid-second round. If you get him late second round, I think it's a smash.
Right, let's talk about the bottom six. There's a couple of players here who have somewhat reasonable deep league profiles, I guess. Nikolai Roy, 15 goals, 22 assists, 37 points, 14 goals, 21 assists, 35 points for you. Basically was just a guy that you want to know in case Tavares or Matthews go down to injury once again. He would go up to second line center in that case. And I think he'd actually probably be somewhat fantasy relevant. He's been a good per minute player in terms of the counting stats throughout his career. And so with a little bit more minutes, if he got the chance to play alongside a Nylander or play alongside even a Matthew Nyes, I think that he could actually provide something in a streaming role. Bobby McMahon, I have for 21 goals and 16 assists, 37 points, 23 goals, 13 assists, 36 points for you. He was the most common line mate for Nylander and Tavares last year. And then he kind of had a nothing burger of a playoffs. I think he was probably injured, but he was like just completely forgettable out there and was treated as such in the playoffs, basically demoted down the lineup. And so I'm a little bit worried about that this year, what that might look like. He was an okay member of that line last year. And so there's a chance that he goes back in that spot this year. But I think Berube, all things considered, would rather have McMahon be this forechecking guy on the third line. I think that's more where you'd like him to live. So overall, I think these are just two guys who might be streamers given the chance up the lineup.
Yeah, I think of the two, I'm actually interested in Nicolas Roy. I think, like you said, if he gets moved up the lineup, there's some bits and pieces there. This is a guy that's really great defensively, right? Helping the team break out the puck, connecting the defense with the wingers. But he played with Tanner Pearson and absolute Golden Knights legend Keegan Colasar, one of my favorites. That was his, the line he was on the most last year. So, I mean, if he's playing with Nylander, sure. Yeah, now we're cooking, right? This is a guy that I think can definitely do stuff. He shows out in things like scoring chance assists per 60. So, yeah, that's always a metric I like to look at. He's able to set up the play. He's able to break the puck out. So there's some meat on the bone there. Yeah, Bobby McMahon, we'll have to wait and see. Gross playoffs, but pretty efficient player. I could see another 20 goals out of McMahon.
All right, let's move on to the defense. Let's get the nasty stuff out of the way first. Jake McCabe, I have for 3 goals, 24 assists, 27 points. You have for 4 goals, 22 assists, rounding down to 25 points. Chris Tanev, I have for 3 goals, 18 assists, 21 points. You have for 4 goals, 14 assists, 18 points. And Oliver Ekman-Larsson, I have for 5 goals, 26 assists, 31 points. You have for 6 goals, 24 assists, and 30 points. Ekman-Larsson most likely to reprise his role on the second power play unit this year. McCabe's claim to fame is the 151 hits and 166 blocks that I have him projected for this year. Yep. Chris Tanev, I have projected for over 200 blocks, which is his role that he can provide to your fantasy team. If you're on ESPN where they have that insane block weighting, then maybe Chris Tanev is relevant in your league. And then Ekman-Larsson, who, Riley injury or otherwise could get some time on top power play at some point throughout this year and be a guy that we mentioned.
Yeah, there's nothing really exciting here. Obviously, you got your Beefer and McCabe there. OEL, Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Yeah, if Riley goes down, we've seen proof of concept there. We've seen Ekman-Larsson on the power play. He ran the Florida power play there, which was a good power play as well. He spent some time PP1 on Toronto as well, and it doesn't really equal production. So, yeah, we're not too excited there. There's probably better options for you out there.
All right, and that leaves Morgan Riley to talk about. I have him for 5 goals, 40 assists, 45 points this year. You have him for 8 goals, 38 assists, and rounding up to 47 points there. I think it's worth noting that Morgan Riley, for as bad as the season ran for him, was still the Maple Leafs' most used defenseman at even strength. And so he is basically in the spots that you want him to be in for fantasy production. The problem was that he was pretty clearly a absolutely terrible fit for Craig Berube's system, or at least the way he was playing within it was a really terrible fit. And so it's just a situation where you're like, can he figure it out? Or is he just fundamentally not that player in this system, not playing the way that Berube wants him to play? He never really figured it out. There were some signs like, oh, maybe it's finally happening for him, and then he would slump again for a while, and it wasn't looking good once again. Again, this is a player, you love this player, I love this player. The Maple Leafs jersey that I own has Riley on the back. So, yeah, this is a player that I've loved since the Leafs drafted him, and he's an exciting offensive dynamo, hugely fast, exciting defenseman in a time when there was no excitement in Leafs Nation whatsoever. So I have lots of fond memories of Morgan Riley, but at this point, most of those are memories and not from this past year. And that leaves me in a place where even if he does get this top power play, I'm not certain that it's going to be widely effective for fantasy purposes. I think a lot of people are looking at this situation saying, oh, Morgan Riley back on the top power play, instant 60-point defender again. And I really don't think that's the way it's going to work this year.
Yep. I don't have too much to add there. We're wish casting a little bit because I like Morgan Riley so much. But yeah, how he gets there, real fantasy relevance is production on the power play. He did have 14 power play points last year in a really limited power play role. So he can do that. But I mean, that second power play there in Toronto, he's one of the better guys on it. So,
Yeah.
if he's playing with the top guys, he's sort of a little bit of an afterthought there. So, we'll see what happens. I think this is a player that can absolutely get up over 20 power play points. And if he does, now we're close to 50 points, right? And I just don't see 60 point Riley. No, that I think those days are long gone. He can still be a valuable player, but you're right. He has to make an adjustment into Craig Berube's system. He was terrible defensively last year, right? And that's really that's gonna limit you won't get onto the ice, right? So he lost like 2 minutes and 20 seconds of average time on ice in one season, right? So that should say a lot, right? He's going to have to find his place in Craig Berube's system and gain the coach's confidence. And if he's able to do that and produce on the power play and all these other things, now we're looking at a 50-point Morgan Riley. But for now, we're being cautious with the player.
Yeah, I think that is a wise place to end up when it comes to Morgan Riley on this year. It is unfortunate, so I really do like the player, but I think you've got to land there in the end. Top 3 targets, Blake, who you got?
I got Matthews number 1. In APL, he's actually, I have to look at my projections here, but he's like 4th. I think he's 3rd or 4th, like in that scoring, just because of his blocks that he brings to the table. So, I mean, you could do a lot worse than Austin Matthews, right? I think he has a shot at number 4. Number 5 potentially if you're not going to go Cale Makar there. I've seen Matthews drop in drafts here to like pick 8 or 9 in one spot. I saw Austin Matthews. What? That makes no sense. This guy's good to go. So get Austin Matthews in your life. I got Matias Michelli as my number 2, just kind of an upside play there. I'm excited about the potential there. Again, to your point, why do you sign this guy if you're not going to put him in a situation to succeed and play to his strengths, which is facilitation? And then lastly, I got John Tavares. All the stuff we mentioned, I think it's a very safe player. He's playing with Willie Nylander. They're going to need him a little bit more. So maybe he gets even just a touch more opportunity and maybe production. That's how I'm landing there.
Yeah, for myself, I've got the same 3 players here. Michelli, number 1, just because he's the guy most likely to exceed expectations by a fair margin if everything goes right this year. John Tavares, number 2. Austin Matthews, number 3. I do think that Austin Matthews is in conversation as high as the 4th pick this year and should fall no farther than the 6th. So definitely higher than his average draft position on most sites. All right, last one here, Blake. Utah, key departures, Michael Kessering and Josh Stone. They were traded to Buffalo for J.J. Peterka, and the Mammoth also added Nate Schmidt this offseason. And it's a pretty good spot. If you're at the Utah Mammoth, there are a lot of rumors that if Brad Marchand had hit the open market, that Utah was going to be one of the teams biggest in on him as well. And so this is a team that seems intent on loading up on some really exciting offense.
Yeah, their owner, he seems like an absolute beauty. He's good to go. He's just throwing money, like whatever you need, let's go. But the good thing is too, they obviously have good people in charge there that are making decisions, because picking up a guy like JJ Peterka when you don't even necessarily have a role for that player on this team, that's exciting, right? He makes the actual team so much better. And for fantasy, we'll talk about it, but I like what the Mammoth have done here. They had an amazing season as a team under the hood last year, which didn't really equal production on the ice, but this is a team I'm excited about.
Andre Torini is the man behind the bench, will return and will push the pace once again. Torini has this offense playing some of the fastest hockey on the planet. This offense, to me, is just a ticking time bomb with the burgeoning firepower up front. I think we could see a true explosion this year. It would not shock me if this was a top 5 NHL offense this year in terms of actual goals scored. You got anything to add on Torini there, Blake?
No, just actually, I remember talking with Kevin Woodley, just the level that Andre Torini's at. Kevin Woodley was mentioning that he actually plays his goalies based on the systems that the other team plays. Like, he's so dialed into the offensive environment that's coming at him. Like, he'll make changes with the goalies based on that, based on their play style. Like, this guy's locked in. Like, he's really dialed in coach, and he's got some amazing young players to work with here. And I like what you mentioned there. Like, it feels like a matter of time before this team truly pops off.
Right. Power play. Keller, Guenther, and Sergachev are the locks for me. For my money, Logan Cooley should be there, but he wasn't down the stretch. It was Barrett Hayton that was playing there, and we've seen it before. It's not the craziest thing to think that a guy who wins faceoffs and is really the only true net front presence that this team has could be also once again taking spots from other players that we'd be more excited for fantasy purposes on this top power play unit. But I think Cooley is the most talented of the other options here, and we saw a lot of that come to fruition last year already, and we should see even more this year. And then we have another spot available where we have Nick Schmaltz, the incumbent, who's been there forever, been the Keller complement forever, versus JJ Peterka, who's the new toy for Andre Torini to deploy as he sees fit. How are you seeing this power play working out in the early going? How do you think it kind of works out over the course of the season?
It's a tough one for sure because of all the things you mentioned. I think Schmaltz, based on what he's done historically, probably earned a spot there, at least an opening night. We'll see Schmaltz there on the top power play. And I do think that as long as he has a good camp and everything's looking good, Logan Cooley on the top power play as well. So that's what maybe that's wish casting as well. That's what I'm hoping happens. But, I think that you bring in a guy like JJ Peterka, and now he's like I think he's the highest paid forward on the team. Like, and you're going to give him power play too. Like, I don't know about that. That kind of doesn't make sense to me. So I feel like Schmaltz's position is a little bit in jeopardy there with Peterka on the rise. So, God, I'm talking myself out of the situation here. I don't know. Okay, final answer. I'm going Schmaltz, and I'm going Logan Cooley opening night. What do you think?
Yeah, it's really tough for me. Logan Cooley won 44.7% of his faceoffs last year, which is just brutal.
Not good.
Meanwhile, Barrett Hayton won 54.1% of his faceoffs, so they could not be more diametrically opposed. Like, that's 10% of your faceoffs, 10% of your power play chances that just go the other way immediately. And so that's really tough to stomach as a coach, I think. And so that is a real problem for Logan Cooley. I hope the only thing he's been doing this entire offseason is just taking draws against like Sidney Crosby or whoever he can find to take draws against like all offseason. That's what he should be doing. I think he's got the other stuff figured out already. But I'm hoping for Cooley. I think that on opening night, we could very well see Hayton and Schmaltz as the incumbents. I think that both Peterka and Cooley will get looks throughout the season, and they'll find what works the best. But I think for Cooley to really establish himself there for the entire year, he's going to have to improve the faceoffs. Let's dig in on some projections. Logan Cooley, I do have as the true 1C, taking things over this year. I have him for 28 goals, 44 assists, running down to 71 points. You have him for 26 goals, 45 assists, 71 points. This is a player that I have all the time for in the world this year. He is definitely going to be a player that I have in multiple spots. Utah, great schedule as well. Shot assists are huge here. High danger assists, absolutely elite. The entries with chances, absolutely elite. Logan Cooley is doing all of that stuff kind of behind the scenes. No, he's not a terrific goal scorer or, high-end shot producer. He's still going to be close to 200 shots I'm projected for at the end of the day. I think there's situations like this is the median projection, right? If he doesn't get top power play at any point throughout the season, he's probably below this projection. But there are also situations where he gets top power play all season, plus he's actually taking a bigger step this year than we thought. There are 90-point scenarios for Logan Cooley this year, in my opinion, especially if he plays with Keller and Guenther at even strength all year, which I think is a very real possibility. So I have all the time in the world for Logan Cooley. He's going in like the 9th, 10th round in most places I'm seeing. I haven't checked his Yahoo ADP, actually. I should do that one.
It's in the 160s.
166 on Yahoo. Like, you got to get some Logan Cooley in your life.
Yeah, they're forcing us to. I mean, 166, my God. I've got him in a ton of spots in our mocks, in best balls, because Utah has a pretty good schedule as well. I think this is absolutely, it's a lowercase L, little risk That works. Okay. Yeah, I mean, what's the problem here? I feel like this guy is an elite offensive player. Yeah, I think there's going to be some shuffling, some wiggle room to kind of figuring out how the deployment is going to look. Because yeah, Cooley played as the 2C last year. Barrett Hayton played a lot with Nick Schmaltz and Clayton Keller, so that's fine. But when Cooley played with Keller and Guenther, they scored their opponents 12-6, so that's really nice. And they had a 54% Corsi for percentage at even strength. They're tilting the ice. Okay, so we're going to talk about Guenther as well here coming up. Like, I think we're seeing a come up for both Cooley and Guenther. Getting, they're leaning into the youth movement here. I think these guys are ready to go, and that should be your top line with a guy like Clayton Keller, who is an elite player already. So yeah, I'm very excited about Logan Cooley. 70 points. I think that feels so safe. That's what he paced for last year, right? And so I feel like, again, like you said, median projection, there's lots of ways for him to smash that.
Clayton Keller next up, 33 goals, 54 assists, 87 points for me. 32 goals, 53 assists, 85 points for you. Clayton Keller, really bankable point per game player, in my opinion. He is the engine of this offense. 82% even strength IPP is what I have him for. It's just huge. These are Nikolai Ehlers type numbers in terms of the percentage of offense that he's got on his stick. 224 shots, which is pretty good. Close to 30 power play points. That's another spot that could take a little bit of a jump this year. I think last year he probably ran about as true as possible to get to the totals that he did, but he should be very solid this year once again. The problem is, 17 hits, 31 blocks. He's not really providing you anything outside of that. So he is a good spot, but there's actually usually been other players that I'm a little bit more into where he's going in kind of like the early third in a lot of spots in our APL drafts. And I haven't gotten myself much Clayton Keller. ADP 29.2 in APL mocks. So yeah, that's the early mid third. And that's just a spot where I'm probably targeting some other guys who have some bigger peripheral floors. If you're over on Yahoo, he's at 38, which is obviously a much, much more interesting proposition there. So overall, Clayton Keller, I think, is really bankable. I like the player a lot. Where he's going in sharper drafts, I think you may have some other options that you may want to consider. But just for the off nights and the left wing, right wing eligibility, definitely not going to hate on a Clayton Keller pick.
Yeah, absolutely. Just had a good conversation with Josh Hutchinson at the ADP battle. We were talking about Clayton Keller versus Jesper Bratt, right, as kind of those dual eligible guys, and we landed on Bratt as the safer choice just because of the periffs. But I think the offensive ceiling might be with Keller here. But I mean, it's going to take, we're going to have to see what those lines look like, right? Because he played with Schmaltz and Barrett Hayton last year as his most common line mates. Those are not goal scorers, right? Keller's the goal scorer on that line. Well, if you get a guy like Dylan Guenther on the top line with Clayton Keller, now we've got a guy that can pop off. And if you look at even strength numbers with Clayton Keller, his on ice shooting percentage was pretty low. It was the lowest in 4 seasons. So I think there's a little bit of room for that on ice shooting percentage to bump up even just 1% there with Clayton Keller, which equals more points for him. And I think a lot of those are going to be, assists over to Guenther if that's how they choose to do it, right? 37 power play points. That's probably ceiling Clayton Keller. He might struggle to reach that again. So again, it probably all evens out in the wash, but that's why we have him for like an 85 point season. But again, like you said, there's 90 point potential here. There's even more, right? I mean, he popped for 90 points last year, and I think he could do it again.
All right, Dylan Guenther, 32 goals, 36 assists, 68 points for me. 35 goals, 33 assists, 68 points for you. Again, we miss an opportunity on that one there. 245 shots I have him for, 67 hits, 51 blocks. He does a little bit of that peripheral stuff as well, which is really nice. This 68 point projection comes with 17 minutes, 45 seconds average time on ice for me. For whatever reason, they have really kind of held him back in terms of not giving him a full kind of line one level minutes. And to me, that's a big mistake because this guy is super efficient, super impressive how he's able to drive shot chance generation numbers, everything that we like to see. This is definitely the brand of player that we want to be in on. I do see him having 40 plus goal potential this year. Maybe throughout his career, if everything breaks right and he does take another step, I could see this being a guy who does hit 50 at some point in his career. That wouldn't be too shocking to me. I mean, all you have to do is turn on the highlights and see this guy fire the puck, and you know that he at least has that part of his game figured out. It's whether he can find that terrific chemistry with Logan Cooley and Clayton Keller on a top line. And if that line can really hit in the way that we think it can, the ceiling scenarios here are just super exciting for Dylan Guenther.
Yeah, this guy's shot is unbelievable. I remember there was a stretch last season where he was scoring a bunch of overtime goals or game winners and stuff. Is like the puck's on his stick and he just flicks it real quick, and it's it's a different kind of shot. It doesn't even look like he's putting anything into it, and it just flies off his stick. So I'm a big fan of this player. He's an elite shooter. There's no question. It's all going to come down to ice time, right? With Dylan Guenther. And we saw a little bit of it last year. I know I've talked about this before, but he was injured and then he came back, and there was like a 10-game stretch where he was getting like 18 to 20 minutes a night, and they were just trotting him out there. And I was excited because I had him in a bunch of spots, and it was going good. And then, they bumped him back down to sort of his season average ice time. So you and I projected him for a modest ice time increase here, but truly, like, if he can get up over 18 and a half minutes, maybe 19 minutes. Now we're looking at like a 75 to 85 point player, Dylan Guenther, with, like you said, 40 goal potential, probably for his career. So great power play player at this point. I mean, he just needs more ice time, and that's really it.
Moving on to the second line here, Barrett Hayton, I have for 19 goals, 22 assists, 41 points. You have for 20 goals, 25 assists, 45 points. Barrett Hayton is solidly in the streamer category for me. This is with 13.6 power play points for me. So some power play role for sure to get him to this number. So just a guy that you're going to be streaming at points throughout the year when he's getting that look on the top line, when he's getting that look on the top power play, which I assume will happen at some point throughout the year. I would prefer if it was just Logan Cooley over Barrett Hayton everywhere, but most likely we get Barrett Hayton in those roles at points throughout the year. And so I do think that he's going to have some fantasy relevance, if only as a streamer, in those spots.
Yep, not too much to add. Going to be a premium stream, and then if you have injuries or anything like that, like if Cooley goes down, Hayton's a must-add in my opinion. Like if he's secure on power play 1, that's a player you probably should have on your roster, right? He's going to be low end, but 55 to 65 point player if he's power play 1 the whole year and like Logan Cooley's out of business, right? So I think he's great for the team, not so much for fantasy.
JJ Peterka, I have for 25 goals, 30 assists, 55 points. You have him for 31 goals, 28 assists, 59 points. This is one of the players that we have a bigger difference on in our projections. It's still not that much, only 3.7 points, but you are a little bit higher here on the goal scoring upside for Peterka. I have him for 13.9 power play points because I do think he works into that top power play for some stretch at some point. What do you have for power play points there for Peterka?
Yeah, I got him for 18 okay. Power play points. So I think he's getting there a little bit more.
Yep. So that's the difference there. And I can definitely see that scenario, but I think he is going to need that because I do kind of think that they figured it out with Cooley, Keller, Guenther as the top line last year and another year gone. I just think they're going to realize that these are the 3 most talented players on the roster and let them cook unless they really feel like they can't make the second line work with the players that they have. But I do feel like they will be able to figure it out with the guys they have there overall. So I am feeling relatively confident about how this deployment is going to shake out on average over the course of the season. And so for my money, that's why I've got Peterka at the 55 point pace that I do. If he is on top power play, then obviously he's much more interesting there. This is a player who is going to give you a decent amount of shots, 181 shots, but he doesn't hit, he doesn't block, he doesn't give you much in the way of extra peripherals there.
I think it'll be interesting with Peterka this year because he was attached to Tage Thompson last year, who's an elite goal scorer. And I think that Peterka is one of these players that adapted his style to fit the line that he was on, because Peterka had a season where he was approaching that 10 shots on goal per 60 at even strength, what we'd like to see as an elite shooter. And then the next season that went down to like 6 point whatever, right? And that was I think because he was feeding the puck to Tage, he has that offensive ability to do that. So I guess the question is, what type of player is he going to be here with Utah? If you look at the potential line, he's going to be on Nick Schmaltz, Barrett Hayton, JJ Peterka. Who's the shooter on that line? It's going to be Peterka, right? Peterka is the one who's going to be shooting. And I think we're probably going to see an uptick in his shots a goal per 60 at even strength. Yeah, he needs power play 1 to really pop for fantasy, but I think we could see more goals scored at even strength. And it's a great signing for the team. I just wonder how they're going to fit him in here, right? Like he's an absolute smash. I was so hoping that the Vancouver Canucks, like there was some rumors that like, oh, they're kicking tires on Peterka. I'm like, yeah, get him the hell in here. But it didn't happen. But yeah, they got so many good young players on this team. It's kind of hard to parse out where exactly they're all going to land on opening night.
Nick Schmaltz, 19 goals, 35 assists, 54 points. You have him for 20 goals, 36 assists, 56 points. We've been in on Nick Schmaltz as long as I can remember, basically, because of that top line, top power play just being locked in. And this is the first year where that looks destined to change, if not on opening night, then at some point throughout the season. They just have too many mouths to feed here. And Nick Schmaltz, while a very solid player, doesn't have the same type of upside that some of these other guys sport. So I think that Schmaltz is one of the more likely candidates to get bounced off the top power play, even if he starts there this year. That being said, that doesn't mean that you can't grab Schmaltz at the beginning of the year and have him while he is on the top power play and then drop him when he's not. He's basically free in drafts, so it's not a player that I'm out on by any stretch of the imagination. I actually think that he's kind of a sneaky early season pickup. So I still have some love for Nick Schmaltz. I just think you got to be cognizant of the fact that more than likely this team is moving away from him in the long term.
How dare you, sir? No. All right. Yeah, I kind of agree with what you're saying, but yeah, he wasn't as efficient last year. His efficiency's gone down, which is kind of weird, right? So I think there's potential for him to bump up with his efficiency. And Utah had the 10th best power play last year, and this guy was a big part of it. He had 25 power play points. So yeah, I agree with you. I think he's probably locked in for power play 1 to start the season. I find it hard to think of them going away from him. That works really well, right? It's just because they have these good players and kind of makes sense and you want to see them move in. I'm not sure they're going to be so quick to move away from Nick Schmaltz there. I mean, that said, I projected him for 20 power play points as opposed to the 25 he had last year. So I think there's going to be some shuffling there. But at the end of the day, Nick Schmaltz is an amazing facilitator, right? All those things we like to see, high danger passes for shot assist, chance assist. He balls out in those metrics really well. And he's still going to get top 6 deployment. And I do think the power play will be there. So I like the player. And like you said, sneaky pick for free at the end of your drafts. Like what do you have to lose?
Jack McBain, the only member of the third line we did a projection for, 12 goals, 13 assists, 25 points for me, 12 goals, 14 assists, 26 points for you. Really the only reason to be looking at Jack McBain is the 281 hits that I have him projected for. Blake, I know you have got something to say about this guy.
McBain, let's get silly. I wish my name was McBain. I wish I was Blake McBain. I guess I could change it legally. I mean, what do you think about that, Nate?
We would miss out on some other spectacular jokes with your current last name, but
Right. Okay. That's fair.
do think that McBain is a solid second choice.
Okay, maybe I'll make it my middle name. Blake McBain Creamer. I don't know. I'm workshopping that. Hit me up in the comments if you like it. Thank you for listening to the 2-hour mark of our podcast, by the way. I really appreciate that. Anyways, yeah, this guy's a mega beefer. Enough said. I do like the player, though. He finds himself in good situations on this team. I think he's a little bit more than just a beefer, but I mean, in points leagues, what the hell? No, you're not picking up Jack McBain. You're streaming him in your category leagues, and you're loving your life.
Let's move on to the defense here. Mikhail Sergachev going to run that top power play again. 11 goals, 41 assists, 51 points for me. 12 goals, 43 assists, 55 points for you. Sergachev is kind of not looking that efficient. I don't think he's a significant part of this power play necessarily. Like, I don't think even if the power play pops off that he'll necessarily have, 25 to 30 power play points in a best case scenario. And so I'm kind of left thinking that Sergachev might just be at best case a 55 point defenseman, maybe 60 if everything breaks perfectly. And so where he's going, I'm just kind of not into the price. How are you feeling about Sergachev right now?
I found myself picking him up in a few spots, mostly best balls because of the Utah schedule, but because defense has been getting decimated really early on in the first few rounds. So now you're staring at Sergachev. And yeah, I find myself kind of passing him by a little bit because I don't think the value is there. Right. Kind of to your point, but he's still a great player. I feel like this guy's sort of developing more into kind of like a more at cider kind of player, right? Where it's, yeah, he's old faithful. Like you can expect a good floor there, but in terms of ceiling, like where's it coming from? His big year, 64 points in 79 games. He was quarterbacking Tampa's power play, right? 27 power play points. What are we doing? No, I mean, he had 23 last year on with even more power play time on Utah and less efficiency. So that I just think it's a good solid floor player that if you miss out on the first little bit of defenseman, you could do worse than Mikhail Sergachev, but I don't like the value. I don't know. Like, where are you at? I know we've had this conversation to some degree before, but like, yeah, once the top kind of tiers of defensemen are gone, it feels like the value is really nuked until you get into double digit rounds. Is that kind of how you're seeing it?
Yeah, for sure. I can't stomach Sergachev. He's going 52 in the APL mocks.
Yeah.
On Yahoo, he's going 82. So, like, obviously,
Yeah.
that's an
Much better.
entirely different value proposition down there. But in these leagues where people are kind of pushing up, because he does have a pretty locked in power play one role, we all expect that. That's the general consensus in the fantasy community. It really feels like he's just getting pulled way up. Like, everybody that goes immediately after him in our APL drafts, I'm way more interested in. Pedersen, Konechny, Ehlers, Guenther, Aho, Wyatt
Yeah.
Johnson, DeBrinket. Even like I would take Seth Jones over him personally. You're looking at Lucas Raymond, Kevin Fiala, Mark Scheifele, Alex Tuck, Timo Meyer, Thomas Harley. Like the list goes on. These are all guys that I actually think I would take straight up over Sergachev. He's going ahead of all of them just because people feel good about the role that he has. And that's not enough for me. I want a guy who projects for something a little bit more if I'm going to spend an early fifth round pick on him. All right, you did a projection for John Marino, which is a commendable work of art. 3 goals, 28 assists, and 31 points. You got anything to say for yourself, Blake?
You know what? Not about the projection, right? We're not doing anything here, but this is going to be a valuable player for Utah. And,
Yeah.
this is a team that played very fast, right? They were number one in shots generated off the rush on the year, right? An amazing rush team, lots of chances coming back the other way. Marino is really, he's a great defensive defenseman, really slick. He's not your typical defensive defenseman. This is a guy that breaks the puck out really well. He's really slick. He's good at D zone pressures, getting away from pressure and making the right play. So he's just going to like raise the floor of the entire team, defensively in particular. So I just think he's a great player for this team, and he's going to elevate players like Mikhail Sergachev potentially, right? Guys like Sean Dursey, whoever he plays with. I feel like John Marino is going to be a net positive for that pair.
Right. Lastly, Sean Dursey, I have for 10 goals, 24 assists, 34 points. You have him for 10 goals, 27 assists, and 37 points. Sean Dursey, I think, is actually probably a viable guy. Like 144 blocks is a nice little number there. So it's not a guy that you can't draft, I guess, especially given the off nights, but more likely a guy that you're going to stream in because of those off nights at certain points throughout the year.
Yep. I remember our conversation last year. We're talking about Dursey versus Sergachev for power play one. And I remember Dursey came out with massive, he came out with a massive first couple games, like 22 minutes in the first game, 25-30 in the second game, 29 minutes in the third game. And then he was injured 9 minutes into the game after that. So we kind of didn't get to see what I thought might happen with Dursey. And then when he came back, he was getting kind of the 18 to 22 minute treatment there. Sergachev was already well established. And I think he's well established going into this year. So that said, Sergachev gets injured. I think Dursey is absolutely a player of interest. I think he can more than just run a power play one. I honestly believe that he might be a little bit better offensively than Sergachev, like in that role, right? Not just at even strength, right? I think Sergachev's obviously the better player, certainly for fantasy, but I do think that Dursey has a lot of offensive upside that is untapped, and he's going to need opportunity to do that, and he's just not going to get it. But he is a player of interest for me.
All right, top 3 targets, Blake. Who you got?
I got Dylan Guenther. All right, but he's getting steamed up a little bit, right? Which is difficult, but it's just not a player I want to be out on. Like for all the reasons we mentioned, right? 40 goal potential. Where are you comfortable taking Dylan Guenther, Nate?
Well, I mean, on Yahoo, he's going at 126, so you can
What?
sleepwalk your way till what is that, the 11th round, and then take him there.
I wish I was in leagues like that. That sounds great.
In APL drafts, which is obviously a little bit more indicative of good drafters, he's going at 57.3. So that's definitely more of a spot where you're going to
Yeah.
have to make a value proposition. That's the late 5th round. So yeah, he's going around guys like Aho who are point per game, obviously at different positions, center only, but you're going to have to make that call for yourself there, and that's a real conversation at that point.
Yeah, you're staking your claim on a player, and that's a great player to do it with, right?
Yeah.
But you're banking on something that we haven't seen yet, which is more deployment, right? And that's risky bisky, all right. But shout out to you if you do it. Logan Cooley's my number 2 for all the reasons we mentioned. Guys, uber talented, power play 1. If that's his, I think we're looking at 70-point floor minimum. And then JJ Peterka, I'm interested. I'm very interested. I love this player. I think he's going to get back to his shooting ways. And I just think his style fits really well at what they do here in Utah, which is play fast. And yeah, a lot of young, exciting players for him to play with. So there you go.
All right, for myself, Logan Cooley is my number 1. I think if anybody takes a massive step this year and absolutely pops off, it's probably going to be Logan Cooley in a center 1 role
Oh,
for the
yeah.
Mammoth. Dylan Guenther right behind him, though, and I don't think it's a bad choice to have Guenther ahead of Logan Cooley, but the value you're getting on Cooley is just so good. Even in sharper drafts, for whatever reason, people are continuing to fade him, and I will not be that player. 110.2 is his APL ADP. Lastly, Nick Schmaltz, for kind of the reasons that I mentioned. I think he's kind of a little bit of a sneaky pick you can throw on your roster at the end of your draft, and it might only be for the first month or two of the season where he's really viable, but he might actually be quite good for that first month or two of the season, and that's worth something to me. All right, Blake, we did it. We made it to the end of the episode. For
One
anyone
more.
who made it here with us, click the link in the description, join the Discord community, like, rate, review, subscribe, comment, whatever you are able to do. It really does help us out. But that is going to be all that we got for this episode. Hopefully, it brought you some value, helped you get a little bit better at fantasy hockey today. All the advanced stats you heard today came from Natural Stat Trick, terrific free resource. All the micro stats you heard today came from All Three Zones, terrific paid resource. Many thanks to Matt Creamer for the new music for our spectacular intro and outro. Be sure to check out Matt Creamer. He's nearly as good looking as Blake Creamer.
Appreciate that. Yeah, that's very nice.
That's going to be it, folks. Much love.